Blood splattered across white ceramic tile in a violent arc before anyone's mind could catch up to what their eyes were seeing. The woman they'd all dismissed, the quiet nurse who took every insult without a word, who stayed late without thanks, who existed in the margins of Redwood City Medical Center like a ghost no one bothered to see, had just thrown herself between a bullet and a stranger's chest. Lena Cross, 32 years old, 5'4", perpetually overlooked, now lay crumpled on cold linoleum with crimson spreading across her scrubs like spilled wine. The decorated soldier she'd saved stared down at her in pure shock, his hands already moving to stop the bleeding, his voice cracking as he shouted for help. Around them, chaos, screaming, shattering glass, and one impossible question burning through every witness's mind. Why would someone so powerless do something so fearless? If you want to see how a single choice can flip an entire world upside down, stay with me until the very end. Like this video, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Now let's rewind and see how we got here. The morning had started the way most of Lena Cross's mornings started. Invisible. She arrived at Redwood City Medical Center at 5:40 in the morning, 20 minutes before her shift officially began, because that's what she always did. The parking lot was still mostly empty, just a few scattered cars belonging to the night crew finishing their rounds. The air smelled like damp asphalt and diesel from the idling ambulances near the ER bay. Lena swiped her badge at the staff entrance, heard the familiar beep, and stepped into the fluorescent hum of the hospital's back corridors. No one greeted her. No one ever did. She moved through the halls with practiced efficiency, her sneakers squeaking softly against polished floors. Her scrubs were navy blue, standard issue, slightly too big because the hospital only stocked sizes small, medium, and large, and she fell somewhere between small and invisible. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun. No makeup, no jewelry except for a slim silver watch her mother had given her years ago. She didn't stand out, and that was fine. Standing out in a place like this usually meant trouble. The ER was already buzzing when she clocked in. A drunk driver had wrapped his car around a telephone pole on Highway 101 around 3 in the morning, and the trauma team was still stitching him back together in Bay 4. 2 rooms over, a woman in her 60s was having a panic attack severe enough to mimic a heart attack, and a pediatric case, possible meningitis, had just been admitted. Lena moved through the organized chaos like water through cracks, checking IV lines, updating charts, restocking supply carts. She was good at this. Better than good. She could read a patient's vitals at a glance, anticipate what the doctors would need before they asked, keep 3 emergencies running smoothly without breaking a sweat. But no one noticed. Dr. Marcus Holt noticed her, though. He noticed her the way you notice a fly buzzing near your coffee. Irritating. Unnecessary. He was the senior attending on the floor that morning, a man in his early 50s with silver hair and an ego the size of the hospital itself. He'd been at Redwood City Medical for nearly 2 decades, and he ruled the ER like a small-time king. When he walked, people moved. When he spoke, people listened. And when he decided someone was beneath him, they stayed beneath him. Lena had been beneath him for 3 years. Cross. His voice cut through the noise around 7:30, sharp and dismissive. Lena looked up from the medication cart she was organizing. Doctor. Holt stood near the nurse's station, one hand resting on the counter, the other holding a tablet like a scepter. You logged this morphine dosage wrong. Again. She blinked. I double-checked it, doctor. The patient in Bay 2 needed— I don't care what you think the patient needed, he interrupted, his tone flat and cold. I care what I ordered. And what I ordered was 5 milligrams, not 7.5. Do you understand the difference, or do I need to explain basic math to you? Heat crawled up Lena's neck. Around them, the ER kept moving, monitors beeping, phones ringing, voices overlapping, but she felt the weight of eyes turning toward her. Other nurses, a med student, a paramedic wheeling in a gurney. The patient's chart indicated a tolerance issue, Lena said quietly, keeping her voice steady. I consulted with Dr. Patel, and she approved the adjustment. Dr. Holt's jaw tightened. Doctor, Patel isn't the attending. I am. And the next time you want to play doctor, I suggest you go to medical school first. He turned away, dismissing her like she was a broken piece of equipment. Fix the chart. And stay in your lane. Lena's hands trembled as she reached for the tablet. She didn't argue. She never argued. Not because she didn't want to, but because she'd learned years ago that arguing with men like Marcus Holt was like shouting into a hurricane. You just got tired and wet, and the storm kept spinning. She corrected the chart, even though she knew she'd been right, and returned to her rounds. The shift dragged on with the kind of slow, grinding monotony that somehow coexisted with periodic bursts of chaos. An elderly man came in complaining of chest pains that turned out to be severe heartburn. A construction worker had driven a nail through his hand and sat stoically while Lena cleaned and dressed the wound, barely flinching. A young mother brought in her toddler, convinced the child had swallowed a battery, only to discover it was a button from his shirt. Lena handled each case with the same quiet competence she brought to everything, moving efficiently from patient to patient, room to room. Around 9:15, she was restocking bandages in the supply closet when she overheard two of the newer nurses talking in hushed tones just outside the door. "I don't know how she stands it," one of them said. Her name was Jessica, a recent graduate with blonde highlights and perfectly manicured nails. "If Dr. Holt talked to me like that, I'd report him to HR. She won't, though," the other replied. That was Morgan, slightly older, sharper around the edges. "She never does. I've been here 2 years and I've never heard her push back, not once." Maybe she's just scared of losing her job. Maybe she just doesn't have a spine. Lena's hand tightened around the box of gauze she was holding. She waited until their voices faded down the hall before stepping out of the closet. She didn't blame them for talking. Everyone talked. That was the nature of hospitals. Gossip spread faster than infections. But hearing it spoken out loud, hearing herself reduced to a coward or a doormat, made something inside her chest tighten like a fist. She returned to the nurse's station and buried herself in paperwork, updating patient files, cross-referencing medication lists, checking lab results. The work was mechanical, soothing in its predictability. Numbers and data didn't judge. They didn't dismiss her or question her competence. They just existed, waiting to be organized. By 9:45, the ER had settled into a temporary lull. The drunk driver was stable and had been moved upstairs. The panic attack patient had been discharged. The pediatric case was under observation. Lena grabbed a protein bar from her locker and headed toward the break room, her shoulders aching from hours of standing. She was halfway down the hall when she heard Dr. Holt's voice again, this time talking to someone else behind a partially open door. "Honestly, I don't know why HR keeps hiring people like her," he was saying, his tone casual, like he was discussing the weather. "No initiative, no critical thinking, just does what she's told and barely manages that." Lena stopped walking. She wasn't supposed to hear this. The door to the staff lounge was slightly ajar, and Dr. Holt was inside with another doctor, Dr. Raymond Kim, a younger attending who usually kept to himself. Lena stood frozen in the hallway, her pulse hammering in her ears. "She seems competent to me," Dr. Kim said carefully, his voice neutral. "Competent?" Dr. Holt laughed, a short, sharp sound. "She's a warm body. That's it. We need nurses who can think on their feet, not just follow orders like robots. I've been trying to get her reassigned for months, but the union makes it impossible. Can't fire people for being mediocre anymore." Dr. Kim didn't respond immediately. Lena could picture him standing there, uncomfortable, probably wishing he were anywhere else. "I think you're being a little harsh, Marcus. She's never caused any problems that I've seen." "That's exactly the problem," Dr. Holt shot back. "She doesn't cause problems because she doesn't do anything worth noticing. She's furniture, and frankly, I'm tired of carrying dead weight on my shifts." Something inside Lena cracked. It wasn't a loud crack. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was quiet, like ice splitting under pressure. But once it started, it didn't stop. She felt it spread through her chest, into her throat, down into her hands. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. She didn't plan what happened next. She didn't think about consequences or professionalism or the fact that Marcus Holt could make her life infinitely worse than it already was. She just pushed the door open and stepped inside. Both doctors turned. Dr. Holt's expression shifted from surprise to irritation in less than a second. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "You can stop lying about me," Lena said. Her voice was low, controlled, but there was steel underneath, a hardness she hadn't used in years. I've worked here for 3 years. I've never missed a shift. I've never made a mistake that put a patient at risk. And every time you've tried to undermine me, I've kept my head down and done my job. But I'm done pretending I don't hear you." Dr. Holt's face darkened. He set down the coffee cup he'd been holding and took a step toward her. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Lena said. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. Pure, clean rage that had been building for 3 years and had finally found an exit. "You don't like me because I don't kiss your ass. Fine. But don't pretend it's about competence." Dr. Kim shifted uncomfortably, glancing between them like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Dr. Holt stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You want to have this conversation? Fine. You're insubordinate. You question orders. You overstep your authority. And right now you're one complaint away from being suspended." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air like smoke. "I suggest you think very carefully about your next move, Miss Cross." Lena stared at him for a long, silent moment. His eyes were cold, calculating, daring her to push further. She could feel Dr. Kim's discomfort radiating from the corner of the room. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. And then she spoke, her voice steady and clear. "Do what you need to do, doctor. But I'm not apologizing for defending myself." She turned and walked out before he could respond. Her hands didn't stop shaking for 20 minutes. She made it back to the nurse's station, forced herself to breathe slowly, and tried to focus on the work in front of her. But the confrontation replayed in her mind on a loop. Every word, every look, every second of defiance she'd allowed herself. Part of her felt exhilarated. Another part felt terrified. She'd just painted a target on her back, and Marcus Holt was exactly the kind of man who never forgot a challenge. Around 10:30, she was called into the supervisor's office. Diane Mercer, the head of nursing, sat behind her desk with a tight, apologetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was in her mid-50s, competent but politically careful, the kind of administrator who valued stability over justice. Her office smelled like lavender air freshener and stress. "Lena," she began, folding her hands on the desk, "Dr. Holt filed a formal complaint." "Of course he did." "He said you were disrespectful and insubordinate," Diane continued, her tone measured. "He claims you confronted him aggressively during his break and created a hostile work environment." Lena almost laughed. "He was talking about me behind my back. I overheard him, and I responded." "I understand," Diane said, though her tone suggested she didn't. "But you know how this works. Dr. Holt is a senior physician. He has influence." "Leverage," Lena corrected quietly. Diane sighed. "Yes, leverage. And right now, I have to take this seriously." "So what happens now?" Lena asked, her voice flat. Diane shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm putting you on administrative leave. Just for a few days. Let things cool down. It's paid leave, so you're not losing money. Just take a breath. Come back next week. We'll figure it out." "You're suspending me." "I'm giving you time off," Diane corrected, as if the distinction mattered. "This isn't a punishment, Lena. It's a precaution." Lena stood slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over her shoulders like a lead blanket. She'd known this was coming the moment she walked out of that lounge. She'd known, and she'd done it anyway. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll go." Diane looked relieved. "Thank you for understanding." Lena didn't respond. She just turned and left the office, letting the door click shut behind her. She was in the locker room 10 minutes later, changing out of her scrubs, when the explosion happened. Not literally, but close enough. The sound came first, a sharp, percussive crack that echoed through the building's ventilation system, then screaming, then the unmistakable wail of sirens converging from every direction, layered over each other like a symphony of disaster. Lena's hands froze on her locker door. She heard running footsteps in the hallway, voices shouting commands, doors slamming open. The overhead PA system crackled to life, and the automated voice was clipped and mechanical. "Code Silver! Code Silver! Active shooter situation reported at Valley Plaza Shopping Center, 2 blocks east. All available personnel to ER. Repeat, Code Silver. This is not a drill." Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. Valley Plaza. That was the outdoor shopping center she walked past every morning on her way to work, Clothing stores, a bookshop, a coffee place, an electronics store. She'd bought groceries there just 2 days ago. She didn't think. She just moved. She shoved her street clothes back into her locker, yanked her scrubs back on, and ran toward the ER. The hallways were chaos. Doctors sprinting, nurses pulling crash carts, security personnel barking into radios. She burst through the double doors into the emergency department and was immediately swallowed by the storm. The trauma bays were being prepped at lightning speed. Nurses were pulling supplies, IV kits, gauze, chest tubes, intubation equipment. Doctors were barking orders, assigning roles, preparing for the worst. The first wave of wounded hadn't arrived yet, but everyone knew it was coming. "Cross!" someone shouted. She turned. It was Dr. Raymond Kim, his face pale but focused, his hands already gloved. "Bay 3. We're going to need all hands. Get ready." Lena nodded and sprinted to Bay 3, where another nurse, Morgan, the one who'd called her spineless earlier, was already setting up monitors and laying out instruments. Their eyes met briefly. Morgan opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it and turned back to her work. The first ambulance arrived 3 minutes later. The paramedics wheeled in a middle-aged woman with a gunshot wound to her thigh, blood soaking through makeshift bandages. She was conscious, screaming, clutching at the gurney rails. Lena moved instantly, helping transfer her to the bed, cutting away clothing, applying pressure while the doctors assessed. "Entry wound, lateral thigh, no exit," Dr. Kim announced, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Possible femoral involvement. Get me an ultrasound and type and cross her blood. Lena, start a second IV line, wide bore." Lena's hands moved on autopilot, finding the vein, threading the catheter, taping it down. The woman kept screaming, her eyes wild with terror and pain. "My daughter. Where's my daughter? She was right next to me. We're looking for her," Lena said, her voice steady and gentle even as her hands worked at full speed. "Right now, I need you to stay still so we can help you." The woman's screams dissolved into sobs. More ambulances arrived. More victims. A man in his 20s with a bullet lodged in his shoulder, another with shrapnel wounds from shattered glass. A teenage girl who'd been trampled in the panic, her ankle broken, her face bruised and swollen. An elderly man having a heart attack triggered by the stress. They kept coming, wave after wave, and the ER transformed into a battlefield. Lena moved between patients like a ghost, starting IVs, taking vitals, relaying information to doctors, keeping people alive long enough for surgery or stabilization. She didn't think about Dr. Holt. She didn't think about being suspended. She didn't think about anything except the work in front of her, the immediate, desperate work of stopping people from dying. Around 12:15, a paramedic rushed in with a child. A boy, maybe 6 years old, unconscious, his small chest barely rising. Shrapnel wound to the abdomen. His mother ran alongside the gurney, hysterical, covered in her son's blood. "Please, please save him, please!" Lena grabbed the mother gently but firmly, guiding her away from the trauma bay. "We're going to do everything we can, but right now I need you to let us work. Can you tell me his name?" "Tyler," the woman sobbed. "His name is Tyler." "Okay, Tyler's in the best hands, I promise." She handed the mother off to a social worker and ran back into the fray. By 1 o'clock, the ER was a war zone. Every bay was full. Overflow patients lined the hallways. The smell of blood and antiseptic and fear hung thick in the air. Doctors and nurses moved in controlled chaos, their faces grim, their movements precise. Lena's scrubs were soaked with sweat and stained with blood that wasn't hers. Her hands ached, her legs trembled, but she didn't stop. And then, around 1:30, she heard it. The police scanner near the nurses' station crackled to life, the dispatcher's voice tight with urgency. "All units, officer down at Valley Plaza. Repeat, officer down. Suspect still active. Hostages confirmed inside Tech World Electronics. SWAT en route." Lena's hand stilled. She looked up from the IV line she was adjusting, her pulse spiking. Officer down, hostages, suspects still active. The words echoed in her head, and something deep inside her, something she'd buried for years, stirred to life. Her vision narrowed, her breathing steadied. The noise of the ER faded into a low hum. She dropped the IV tubing and ran. "Cross!" someone yelled behind her. "Where are you going?" She didn't answer. She didn't look back. She just ran. She burst through the ER exit and into the blinding California sun. The heat hit her like a wall, but she barely felt it. The hospital was 2 blocks from Valley Plaza. She could see the smoke rising, black and thick against the blue sky. Police cars were everywhere, dozens of them, lights flashing, officers crouched behind open doors with weapons drawn. Yellow tape cordoned off the entire block. A crowd of civilians pressed against the barriers, phones out, filming everything, their faces a mix of horror and morbid curiosity. Lena pushed through them. "Ma'am, you can't—" A young officer grabbed her arm, his face flushed with adrenaline. She pulled free. "I'm a nurse. I can help." "Ma'am, it's not safe." She ignored him and ducked under the tape. The scene in front of her was surreal. The shopping center looked like a bomb had gone off. Shattered glass glittered on the pavement like diamonds. Overturned tables and chairs from the outdoor cafe lay scattered across the plaza. A car was burning in the parking lot, sending up plumes of oily black smoke. And in the center of it all was Tech World Electronics, a mid-sized store with wide glass windows, now spiderwebbed with cracks. Inside she could see movement, shadows shifting, people crouching, and then a figure stepped into view near the entrance. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in tactical gear that didn't belong to any police department she recognized. Black fatigues, body armor, no visible insignia. He moved with the kind of controlled precision that only came from extensive training, every step deliberate, every motion efficient. He was backing toward the shattered entrance, weapon raised, his face calm despite the chaos. And then Lena saw them. 2 armed men inside the store, flanking him from different angles. One of them raised a pistol, his hand steady, his finger tightening on the trigger. Time slowed. Lena's body moved before her brain caught up. She didn't think about training or protocols or the fact that she was unarmed and utterly vulnerable. She just ran. She covered the distance in seconds, her sneakers slapping against the pavement, her breath coming in sharp bursts. The man in tactical gear, Major Ethan Cole, though she wouldn't learn his name until later, turned at the sound of her footsteps. His eyes widened in shock. "Get down!" he shouted, his voice a raw command. She didn't get down. She stepped directly in front of him, her body between his and the gunman inside the store. The gunshot was deafening. Pain exploded through her left side, white-hot and all-consuming, like someone had driven a burning spike through her ribs. Her legs buckled. The world tilted violently. She felt strong arms catch her before she hit the pavement, heard a voice, deep, urgent, desperate, shouting words she couldn't quite process. "Medic! I need a medic now!" Major Cole's voice cracked as he lowered her to the ground, his hands already moving to the wound in her side. Blood poured between his fingers, hot and slick. "Stay with me! Do you hear me? Stay with me!" Lena tried to speak, but no words came. Her vision blurred at the edges, darkening like someone was slowly turning down the lights. She could hear chaos erupting around her, gunfire, shouting, the heavy thud of boots on pavement, but it all felt distant, like she was listening from underwater. "What's your name?" Cole demanded, his face hovering above hers. His eyes were blue-gray, sharp and focused, refusing to let her slip away. "Tell me your name." "Lena," she managed to whisper, the word barely audible. "Lena." "Okay. Lena, you're going to be okay. Do you hear me? You're going to be fine." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to tell him she was a nurse, that she knew exactly how bad this was, that she could feel her pulse weakening and her body going into shock. But the darkness was spreading too fast. Around them, the world erupted into violence. SWAT units stormed the building from multiple angles, flashbangs detonating with blinding light and concussive force. Gunfire cracked in rapid bursts. Suspects dropped. Hostages screamed. But all Lena could see was the man's face above her, his hands pressed against her side, his voice cutting through the fog. "You're not dying here," he said, and there was something in his tone, a command, a promise, a refusal to accept any other outcome. "Not after what you just did. Do you understand? You don't get to die." Lena's lips moved, forming words she couldn't voice, and then she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. The deep, rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors cutting through the air, growing louder by the second. Not police helicopters, not news choppers. Something else. Something heavier, more powerful. Major Cole looked up, his expression shifting from desperation to something else. Recognition, maybe, or disbelief. "What the hell?" he breathed. Two massive military helicopters descended from the sky, their shadows sweeping across the plaza like the wings of enormous birds. They were unmarked but unmistakable, Black Hawks, the kind used for tactical insertions and high-priority operations. The crowd behind the police barriers erupted in confusion, phones lifting, voices rising in a cacophony of questions. The helicopters touched down in the parking lot, and armed personnel poured out, not police, not SWAT, but soldiers in full combat gear. They moved with lethal efficiency, securing the perimeter, establishing a command post, taking control of the scene in less than 60 seconds. A commanding officer strode toward Cole, his face hard and focused. He glanced down at Lena, then back at Cole. "Major," he said, his voice clipped. "Status." "Civilian took a round meant for me," Cole replied, his hand still pressed against Lena's wound. "She needs immediate evac." The officer's eyes narrowed. He looked at Lena again, his gaze sharpening. "Who is she?" "I don't know, but she just saved my life." The officer pulled out a radio. "I need a medevac now. Priority 1. He paused, then added, "And get me a full background check on this woman. I want to know who she is and why she's here." Lena's eyes fluttered. The voices were fading. The pain was fading. Everything was fading except for Cole's face, still hovering above her, still refusing to let go. "Stay with me, Lena," he said again, and this time his voice was almost pleading. "Just a little longer." But the darkness was closing in, thick and heavy and irresistible. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was the sky above, brilliant blue, cloudless, and filled with the silhouettes of helicopters circling like guardian angels made of steel. The medical chopper lifted off before Lena's body had even stopped convulsing. Major Ethan Cole knelt beside her on the vibrating floor of the aircraft, one hand pressed against the wound in her side, while a combat medic worked with brutal efficiency to stabilize her vitals. The helicopter banked hard over the city, and through the open door, Cole could see the plaza below shrinking into a miniature crime scene. Police lights still flashing, SWAT teams securing the perimeter, news vans flooding in like vultures. "Pulse is thready," the medic announced, his gloved hands slick with blood. "BP dropping. She's going into hypovolemic shock." "Then stop it," Cole said, his voice sharp. The medic didn't look up. "I'm trying, sir." Cole watched the woman's face, pale, slackening, her breathing shallow and irregular. He didn't know her. He'd never seen her before that impossible moment when she'd thrown herself between him and a bullet. But something about her expression, even now, even unconscious and bleeding out, held a strange kind of peace. Like she'd made a choice and accepted the consequences without hesitation. That kind of resolve didn't come from nowhere. "Who is she?" the pilot asked over the headset, his voice crackling with static. "Civilian," Cole replied. "That's all I know." "Civilian my ass," the medic muttered under his breath as he inserted another IV line. "Look at her hands." Cole did. Her hands were small, delicate, but the skin was marked with old scars, tiny nicks and burns consistent with years of medical work. Her fingers were steady, even in unconsciousness. No tremor, no softness. These were hands that had been trained. The helicopter descended toward Redwood City Medical Center's rooftop helipad, and the moment the skids touched concrete, a full trauma team was already rushing forward. Cole helped transfer Lena onto a gurney, his hands finally releasing pressure on her wound as the ER staff took over. Doctors swarmed her, shouting commands, pushing fluids, checking pupils. "GSW to the left lateral abdomen," the combat medic reported, rattling off vitals in rapid-fire military shorthand. Estimated blood loss 1,200 cubic centimeters, 2 large bore IVs running wide open, pressure holding at 80/50. One of the doctors, a young woman with sharp eyes and sharper hands, looked up at Cole. "Who is she?" "Lena," Cole said. "That's all I got." "Lena what?" "I don't know." The doctor's expression tightened with frustration, but she didn't argue. "Get her to OR2. Move." They wheeled Lena away at a dead run, the gurney's wheels rattling across the rooftop. Cole stood there for a moment, alone in the downdraft of the helicopter's rotors, watching her disappear through the heavy steel doors. His fatigues were soaked with her blood. His hands were shaking, something that hadn't happened in years, not since his first combat deployment. A voice crackled over his radio. Major Cole, report. He lifted the handset. Subject is in surgery, status unknown. Understood. Return to base for debrief. Cole hesitated, his eyes still locked on the door where she'd vanished. Negative. I'm staying. There was a pause on the other end. Major, I said I'm staying. He cut the channel before anyone could argue. Inside the hospital, chaos had already taken root. The ER was flooded with victims from the plaza. Wounded civilians, traumatized hostages, officers with minor injuries. News crews were setting up outside the main entrance, their satellite trucks blocking traffic. Security was struggling to keep order. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Doctor, Marcus Holt stood at the nurse's station, his face flushed with irritation as he barked orders at a visibly exhausted staff. Where the hell is Cross? He demanded, scanning the room. One of the nurses, Jessica, the one with blonde highlights, looked up nervously. She left, Doctor. She was put on administrative leave this morning. Holt's jaw tightened. Of course she was. Useless even when we need bodies on the floor. He turned to another nurse. Get someone from the float pool down here. We're drowning. Jessica opened her mouth to respond, then froze. Her eyes went wide, fixed on something behind Holt. He turned. Major Ethan Cole stood in the doorway, still in full tactical gear, his uniform streaked with blood. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the kind of presence that made people instinctively step back. His eyes swept the room, cold and assessing, until they landed on Holt. Who's in charge here? Cole asked, his voice flat and commanding. Holt bristled. I'm the senior attending, and you need to leave. This is a restricted area. Cole didn't move. A woman was just brought in. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. Mid-30s, dark hair, about 5'4". Where is she? Surgery, Holt said dismissively. And you still need to leave. What's her name? Holt blinked. Excuse me? Her name, Cole repeated, taking a step forward. The woman who just saved my life. What's her name? Something in Cole's tone made Holt pause. He glanced at Jessica, who was staring at her computer screen with a strange expression. Pull up recent admits, Holt ordered. Trauma cases from the plaza. Jessica's fingers flew across the keyboard. Her face went pale. Oh my God. What? Holt snapped. It's Lena, Jessica whispered. Lena Cross. She was admitted 20 minutes ago. Gunshot wound, critical condition. She looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. Doctor, she was just here. She was working this morning. The color drained from Holt's face. Cole's expression hardened. She works here? She's a nurse, Jessica said, her voice shaking. She's been here for 3 years. Cole turned to Holt, his gaze sharp enough to cut glass. And where were you when she was out there bleeding? Holt's mouth opened, then closed. For once, he had nothing to say. Cole walked past him without another word and disappeared down the hallway toward the surgical wing. The surgery took 4 hours. Cole waited outside OR2 the entire time, ignoring calls from his commanding officer, ignoring the growing media circus outside, ignoring everything except the red light above the operating room door. Other soldiers arrived, members of his unit, dressed in civilian clothes now, their faces grim. They stood with him in silence, a wall of quiet solidarity. Around hour 3, a hospital administrator appeared, a thin, nervous man in his 50s with a clipboard and a desperate need to control the situation. Major Cole, he began, his voice carefully professional. I'm Gregory Vance, Chief Administrator. I need to ask you some questions about the incident. Not now, Cole said without looking at him. Sir, we have protocols. Cole turned his head slowly, and whatever the administrator saw in his eyes made him take a step back. I said not now. Vance retreated. At hour 4, the red light went dark. The OR doors swung open, and a surgeon emerged, pulling off blood-stained gloves. She was in her 40s, gray streaks in her dark hair, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Her name tag read Dr. Sarah Brennan. Cole was on his feet instantly. How is she? Dr. Brennan took a breath. She's alive. The bullet missed her major vessels, but it caused significant internal bleeding. We had to remove part of her spleen and repair damage to her intestinal wall. She's lost a lot of blood, but she's stable. Can I see her? She's in recovery. She won't be conscious for hours. I'll wait. Dr. Brennan studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. You're the one she saved. Yes. She almost died doing it. I know. Dr. Brennan nodded slowly. Recovery room 3. 10 minutes. Cole found Lena in a small, dimly lit room filled with the quiet beeping of monitors. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her skin pale against white sheets, tubes and wires running from her arms. An oxygen cannula rested beneath her nose. Her chest rose and fell in steady, mechanical rhythm. Cole pulled a chair close and sat down. He didn't know what he was doing here. He should have been back at base, filing reports, debriefing his team. But something kept him rooted in place, watching this woman who'd stepped into death without hesitation. His radio crackled. He pulled it out and switched channels. Cole? Major, this is Colonel Draven. The voice was crisp, authoritative. I need you back at base immediately. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind that involves the woman you're sitting next to. Cole's jaw tightened. Explain. Not over radio. Get back here. Now. The line went dead. Cole looked at Lena's unconscious face, then stood and walked out. 40 minutes later, he was standing in a secure briefing room at Fort Hamilton, a military installation 30 miles outside the city. Colonel Draven sat at the head of a conference table, surrounded by intelligence officers and military police. A laptop was open in front of him, displaying a file marked classified. Sit down, Major, Draven said. Cole sat. Draven turned the laptop around so Cole could see the screen. Do you know who Lena Cross is? A nurse, Cole said. Works at Redwood City Medical. That's what she is now, Draven replied. 5 years ago, she was something else entirely. He clicked a key, and the screen filled with personnel records. Cole leaned forward, reading quickly. Service photos. Deployment records. Commendations. And then he saw it. The unit designation that made everything click into place. She was 68W, Cole said slowly. Combat medic. Attached to special operations. Not just attached, Draven corrected. Embedded. She served with Task Force Sentinel for 18 months in classified operations across 3 theaters. She was one of the best field medics we had, kept more operators alive under fire than any other medic in her cohort. Cole stared at the photo on screen. It showed a younger Lena, her hair shorter, her eyes harder, wearing desert fatigues and body armor. She looked like a completely different person. What happened? He asked. Draven's expression darkened. A mission went bad. Her unit was ambushed during a high-value target extraction in hostile territory. 6 operators went down in the first 30 seconds. She dragged 4 of them to cover under sustained fire and kept them alive for 2 hours until exfil arrived. He paused. But 2 didn't make it. One of them was her fiancé, Staff Sergeant David Harrow. The room went silent. She was given a Silver Star for her actions, Draven continued. But after the funeral, she requested an immediate discharge. We tried to keep her. She refused, walked away from the military entirely, and disappeared into civilian life. Cole sat back, processing. And now she's back in the game without even meaning to be. Exactly, Draven said. Which brings us to the real problem. He clicked another key. The screen changed to show news footage, cell phone videos from the plaza, already going viral. The clips showed Lena running toward Cole, stepping in front of him, taking the bullet. The footage was shaky, but clear enough. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times. She's a national story now, Draven said. People want to know who she is. The media is digging. And when they find out she's former special operations, things are going to get complicated. How complicated? Cole asked. Complicated enough that we've been ordered to lock this down. Draven leaned forward. The missions she worked on are still classified. If her background gets out, it could compromise ongoing operations and endanger personnel still in the field. We need to keep her military service buried. Cole's eyes narrowed. You want to erase her. We want to protect her, Draven corrected, and protect national security. But yes, that means keeping her past quiet. What if she doesn't want that? Then we have a problem. Cole stood. With all due respect, Colonel, she just took a bullet for me. Whatever happens next, she deserves to make that choice herself. Draven's expression hardened. Major, this isn't a request. This is a direct order from command. You will not disclose her background to anyone, media, hospital staff, or the woman herself. Are we clear? Cole held his gaze for a long moment. Crystal. Good. Now go back to that hospital and make sure she stays safe. We'll handle the rest. Cole turned and walked out, his mind already racing. When he returned to the hospital, it was past midnight. The ER had quieted somewhat, though exhausted staff still moved through the halls like ghosts. Cole made his way back to the recovery wing and found Lena's room. She was still unconscious, but her vitals had stabilized. A nurse, Morgan, according to her name tag, was checking her IV when Cole entered. "How is she?" he asked quietly. Morgan looked up, startled. "Oh, you're the soldier." She recovered quickly. "She's stable, vitals are good. Dr. Brennan thinks she'll wake up in the next few hours." "Has anyone else been asking about her?" Morgan hesitated. "A few reporters tried to get in, but security turned them away. And—" she trailed off. "And what?" "Dr. Holt came by earlier," Morgan said, her voice carefully neutral. "He wanted to see her chart. I told him only immediate family and authorized personnel were allowed access." Cole's jaw tightened. "Good call." Morgan studied him for a moment. "She saved your life." "Yes." "Why would she do that? She doesn't know you." Cole looked at Lena's sleeping face, the question hanging in the air between them. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm going to find out." Morgan left him alone. Cole pulled the chair close again and settled in to wait. Lena woke at 3:17 in the morning. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, adjusting to the dim light. She drew in a sharp breath, then winced as pain lanced through her side. Her hand moved instinctively toward the wound, but Cole caught her wrist gently. "Easy," he said quietly. "You're in recovery. You're safe." Lena's eyes focused on him, and for a moment confusion flickered across her face. Then recognition dawned. "You," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "Me," Cole confirmed. He released her wrist and reached for a cup of water with a straw. "Small sips." She drank gratefully, then leaned back against the pillows, exhausted from the minimal effort. Did everyone? "The hostages are safe," Cole told her. "The suspects are in custody. You stopped it from getting worse." Lena closed her eyes briefly. "Good." "Why did you do it?" Cole asked. The question came out harder than he intended. She opened her eyes again, meeting his gaze directly. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Because someone had to." "You could have died." "I know." "You didn't know me. You had no obligation." "That's not how it works," Lena interrupted, her tone sharper now, despite her weakness. "When you see someone about to die and you have the ability to stop it, you don't calculate obligation. You just move." Cole stared at her, recognizing the mindset. That was operator thinking, combat thinking, the kind of reflex you didn't develop working hospital shifts. "You're military," he said. It wasn't a question. Lena's expression closed off instantly, like a door slamming shut. "I was. Long time ago." "How long?" "Long enough." She turned her head away. "I don't talk about it." "Maybe you should." "Maybe you should leave." The words were cold, final. Cole recognized a wall when he hit one. He stood slowly, but he didn't move toward the door. Instead, he pulled a business card from his pocket and set it on the table beside her bed. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said quietly. "Major, United States Army Special Operations Command. When you're ready to talk, call me." Lena didn't look at the card. She kept her eyes fixed on the ceiling, her jaw set. Cole walked to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, you saved 7 people today. Not just me. The hostages in that store. They'd be dead if you hadn't drawn fire when you did. SWAT got them out while the suspects were focused on you." He left before she could respond. In the hallway, his phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Draven. "Media lockdown in place. Keep her quiet." Cole deleted the message without responding. The sun rose over Redwood City 3 hours later, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The hospital stirred to life with shift changes and breakfast carts and the endless rhythm of medical routine. But in the administrative wing, a different kind of storm was brewing. Gregory Vance sat in his office with Dr. Marcus Holt, both men looking at a laptop screen displaying the viral videos from yesterday. The footage had been shared millions of times now, picked up by every major news outlet in the country. Headlines screamed variations of the same story. Mystery nurse saves soldier's life. Heroic hospital worker takes bullet. Who is the woman who stopped a terror attack? This is a nightmare, Vance said, rubbing his temples. The press is camped outside. We've had 36 interview requests in the last hour alone. And now the military is involved, which means federal oversight, which means audits. Holt's face was ashen. What do we tell them? About what? About her. About Cross. Holt's voice was tight. She was on administrative leave when this happened. If the media finds out we suspended her hours before she became a national hero, we didn't suspend her, Vance interrupted sharply. We gave her paid time off. There's a difference. Not to the public, there isn't. Vance's phone rang. He answered it, listened for 30 seconds, then hung up with a curse. What? Holt asked. That was legal. Apparently someone leaked her personnel file to a reporter. They know she was put on leave. They know it was your complaint that triggered it. Vance's eyes were cold. They're asking for comment. The blood drained from Holt's face. I was following protocol. She was insubordinate. I don't care what she was, Vance snapped. Right now she's a hero. And you're the man who tried to fire her. Do you understand what that makes you? Holt stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I did nothing wrong. Then you have nothing to worry about. Vance's tone made it clear the conversation was over. But if I were you, I'd prepare a statement. And I'd make it good. Holt stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Downstairs in recovery, Lena was awake and arguing with her nurse about getting out of bed. You had major abdominal surgery less than 12 hours ago, Morgan said firmly, blocking her path. You're not going anywhere. I need to use the bathroom, Lena said through gritted teeth, already halfway to standing. Pain shot through her side, but she ignored it. That's what the catheter is for? I don't care. I'm not lying in this bed another minute. Morgan recognized the look in her eyes, the same stubborn determination that got people hurt. She sighed and helped Lena stand, supporting her weight as they shuffled slowly toward the bathroom. Every step was agony, but Lena's face remained set. You're insane, Morgan muttered. Probably, Lena agreed. When they finally made it back to the bed, Lena was sweating and pale, but there was a grim satisfaction in her expression. She'd moved under her own power. That was something. The whole hospital is talking about you, Morgan said as she adjusted Lena's IV. You're famous. I don't want to be famous. Too late. Morgan pulled out her phone and showed Lena the videos. 7 million views and climbing. Lena watched herself run across the plaza, watched herself step in front of the soldier, watched herself fall. The footage felt distant, like it had happened to someone else. She handed the phone back. Everyone wants to interview you, Morgan continued. News stations, magazines, podcasts. There's even talk of a book deal. Tell them no. All of them? All of them, Morgan studied her face. Why? You're a hero. Lena's expression hardened. I'm a nurse who did her job, that's all. That's not all, though, is it? Morgan said quietly. I pulled your file this morning. Well, tried to. It's locked. Restricted access only. That's not normal for hospital personnel files. Lena's eyes cut to her sharply. Stay out of my file. Why? What are you hiding? Nothing that concerns you. The door opened before Morgan could respond. Dr. Sarah Brennan entered holding a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who'd had approximately 3 hours of sleep in the last 48. How's our patient? She asked. Stubborn, Morgan said. Possibly insane. Sounds about right. Brennan pulled up Lena's chart on her tablet. Your vitals are stable, surgical site looks clean, no signs of infection. You're recovering faster than I expected. Can I go home? Lena asked. Absolutely not. You need to stay here for at least 72 hours, probably longer. I'm fine. You were shot, Brennan said flatly. Yesterday. You are objectively not fine. Lena opened her mouth to argue, but Brennan held up a hand. I'm not negotiating this. You're staying, and that's final. She softened slightly. Look, I get it. You don't like being the patient. None of us do. But you push yourself too hard right now. You'll end up right back in my OR. Is that what you want? Lena slumped back against the pillows, defeated. Brennan nodded with satisfaction. Good. Now, there's someone here who wants to see you. Says it's official business. Who? The door opened wider, and a woman in her early 40s entered. She was dressed in a dark suit, her hair pulled back severely, and she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of federal law enforcement. An ID badge hung from her neck. FBI. Miss Cross, the woman said, her voice professionally neutral. I'm Special Agent Rebecca Ortiz. I need to ask you some questions about yesterday's incident. Lena's expression went carefully blank. I already gave a statement to the police. I'm aware, but we're treating this as a federal investigation now, terrorism charges. Ortiz pulled out a digital recorder. Do you mind if I record this? Yes, I mind. Ortiz raised an eyebrow. May I ask why? Because I don't trust recordings, Lena said bluntly. They have a way of ending up places they shouldn't. For the first time, something almost like respect flickered across Ortiz's face. Fair enough? She put the recorder away and pulled out a notepad instead. Let's start simple. What made you run toward an active shooter situation? I heard someone was in danger. You heard or you saw? Both. And your first instinct was to put yourself in harm's way? My first instinct was to help. Ortiz wrote something down. You're a nurse. You work in emergency medicine. You understand triage, risk assessment, scene safety. Running toward gunfire violates every protocol you've been trained in, so I'll ask again, what made you do it? Lena held her gaze steadily. I saw someone about to die. I had the ability to prevent it, so I did. That's it? That's it. Ortiz studied her for a long moment, her pen tapping against the notepad. You know what's interesting, Miss Cross? Your response time. From the moment that officer was pinned down to the moment you reached him, 11 seconds. That's barely enough time to process what was happening, let alone run 2 blocks and navigate a crime scene. I'm a fast runner. Or a fast thinker. Ortiz leaned forward slightly. The kind of fast thinking that comes from training. Specific training. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Lena's voice was ice. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Ortiz said smoothly. I'm observing. And what I observe is someone with tactical awareness, crisis response instincts, and the kind of calm under fire that most civilians don't possess. She paused. Care to explain that? No. Miss Cross, I said no. Lena's eyes were hard as diamonds. I answered your questions about yesterday. My personal history is none of your business. Ortiz held her gaze for another beat, then closed her notepad. Fair enough, but for what it's worth, you should know that your background check is already in progress. And when federal investigators start digging, they tend to find what they're looking for. She stood and walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. The man you saved, Major Cole, he's been asking a lot of questions about you. If I were you, I'd be careful about what you tell him. I'm not telling him anything. Good. Ortiz's expression was unreadable. Because some secrets are better left buried. She left, and the room fell into heavy silence. Morgan was staring at Lena with wide eyes. What the hell was that about? Nothing, Lena said flatly. That was not nothing. That was... Drop it, Morgan. But Morgan didn't drop it. She stood there, arms crossed, studying Lena like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. You're not just a nurse, are you? Lena closed her eyes. Right now, that's exactly what I am, and that's all I want to be. But you used to be something else. Silence. Morgan's expression softened. Look, I don't know what happened to you, but whatever it was running toward bullets yesterday, that wasn't about being a hero. That was about something deeper. Lena opened her eyes. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not, Morgan admitted. But I know what guilt looks like. And I know what it looks like when someone's trying to outrun their past. She moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, whatever you're carrying, it doesn't have to define you. She left Lena alone with those words hanging in the air like smoke. Outside, the world kept spinning. News crews multiplied. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. Inside the hospital, the staff whispered, And somewhere in the administrative wing, Dr. Marcus Holt sat in his office staring at his phone, watching his professional reputation crumble in real time as someone anonymous, leaked details of his complaint against Lena to a journalist with 2 million followers. By nightfall, three things happened almost simultaneously. First, the hospital received a formal notice of investigation from the State Medical Board regarding workplace harassment and retaliation complaints. Second, video footage from the hospital's own security cameras, footage showing Dr. Holt's confrontation with Lena in the staff lounge, mysteriously appeared on a healthcare workers' advocacy website. Third, Major Ethan Cole received an encrypted message on his secure phone containing a single attachment, Lena Cross's complete military service record, including details of classified operations that should have been impossible to access. The message had no sender information, just 6 words. She deserves the truth. So do you. Cole stared at the screen for a long time, then made a decision that would change everything. He walked back into Lena's hospital room just after 8 p.m., closed the door behind him, and pulled up a chair. "I know who you are," he said quietly. Lena's eyes snapped to his, sharp and wary. "I told you to leave me alone. I know about Task Force Sentinel. I know about the ambush. I know about Staff Sergeant Harrow." Cole's voice was gentle, but firm. "And I know why you've been hiding." Lena's face went white. "Get out!" "No, I said get out." "You saved my life," Cole said, not moving. "I think that earns me the right to 5 minutes of honesty." Lena's hands were shaking. "You don't know anything about me. I know you've been punishing yourself for 5 years for something that wasn't your fault," Cole said. "I know you walked away from a career where you saved lives because you couldn't forgive yourself for the ones you couldn't save. And I know that yesterday, when you saw me in danger, you didn't hesitate. Because deep down, you're still that medic. You're still that soldier." "Stop," Lena's voice cracked. "Just stop. You can't run from this anymore, Lena. The whole country is watching you now. And when they find out..." "When they find out what?" she demanded, her eyes blazing. "That I'm broken? That I failed? That the only reason I'm here is because I couldn't save the man I loved?" The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Cole leaned forward. "When they find out," he said quietly, "that you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. That you kept 4 men alive under sustained fire for 2 hours when anyone else would have given up. That you earned a Silver Star for valor. That you're not broken. You're exactly what this country needs." Lena shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. "You don't understand. I couldn't save him. David was right there, and I couldn't..." "You did everything you could," Cole interrupted. "I read the report. I know what happened. You had 4 critical casualties and 2 minutes to make impossible choices. You saved who you could save." "It wasn't enough. It was everything." The room fell silent except for the quiet beeping of monitors and Lena's ragged breathing. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. He set it on the table beside her bed. "This is your service record," he said. "Everything. Mission reports, commendations, the full classified file. Someone sent it to me anonymously. I don't know who, and I don't know why, but I think they wanted you to remember who you are." Lena stared at the flash drive like it was a live grenade. "You don't have to look at it now," Cole continued. "But when you're ready, it's here. And when you're ready to stop hiding, I'll be here too." He stood to leave, but Lena's voice stopped him. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Cole turned back. "Because yesterday, I watched someone with every reason to stay safe choose danger instead. I watched someone with every reason to quit keep fighting. And I watched someone who thinks they're broken do something impossibly brave." He met her eyes. "People like that don't come along often, and they sure as hell don't deserve to spend their lives in the shadows." He walked out, leaving Lena alone with her tears and her memories and a flash drive containing a past she'd tried so hard to forget. The door clicked shut behind him, and in the silence that followed, Lena's hand slowly reached out toward the flash drive. But before her fingers touched it, every light in the hospital went out. Emergency power kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing everything in dim red emergency lighting. Alarm bells began to ring, and somewhere in the distance, Lena heard the unmistakable sound of heavy boots running toward her room. Lena's hand froze inches from the flash drive as darkness swallowed the room. The sudden silence after the monitors went dead was deafening. 3 seconds of absolute nothingness before backup generators roared to life and bathed everything in blood-red emergency lighting. Then came the boots, heavy and rhythmic, moving fast down the corridor outside her door. She rolled off the bed before her conscious mind caught up with her body, pain screaming through her surgical wound as her feet hit cold tile. Her IV stand clattered sideways. The catheter line pulled taut, and she ripped it free without thinking, muscle memory overriding 3 years of civilian softness. She was halfway to the window when her door burst open. Major Ethan Cole stood in the doorway, weapon drawn, his face carved from stone. "Don't move." "What's happening?" Lena demanded, her voice steady despite the agony radiating from her abdomen. "Power outage. Could be infrastructure failure, could be deliberate." His eyes swept the room in a practiced tactical assessment. "Either way, you're exposed here. I'm in a hospital. You're in a target." Cole moved into the room, positioning himself between Lena and the door. "Someone leaked your service record. If I have it, others do too. And not everyone who knows what you did is friendly." Lena's mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Task Force Sentinel had operated in places where vengeance ran deep and memory ran deeper. She'd saved American lives, which meant she'd ended others, or contributed to their ending. There were people in 3 countries who would pay good money to know her real name and location. "We need to move," Cole said. "I can't walk 2 blocks. I just had surgery." "Then I'll carry you." Before she could argue, the hospital's PA system crackled to life with a voice that didn't belong to any administrator Lena recognized. The accent was neutral, the tone professionally calm, but something underneath it made her blood run cold. "Attention all personnel, this is a security alert. We have reports of an armed individual in the building. All staff and patients are to shelter in place immediately. Lock your doors. Do not attempt to leave your current location. Security and law enforcement are responding." The announcement cut off abruptly. Cole's expression hardened. "That wasn't hospital security. How do you know?" "Because hospital security doesn't announce active shooters over the PA system. It creates panic and tells the shooter exactly where the response is coming from." He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly, then cursed under his breath. "No signal. They're jamming communications." Lena felt her training slide back into place like a key turning in a lock she'd kept rusted shut. "Then this isn't random. This is coordinated." "Agreed." Cole moved to the door, checking the corridor in both directions. "And whoever they are, they know what they're doing." The sound of gunfire erupted somewhere below them, 3 sharp cracks followed by screaming. Then more gunfire, closer this time, answered by the deeper bark of police weapons. The building's fire alarm began shrieking, adding another layer of chaos to the nightmare unfolding around them. Cole grabbed Lena's arm. "We're leaving. Now." She didn't argue. She grabbed the flash drive from the bedside table, shoved it into the pocket of her hospital gown, and let Cole pull her into the corridor. Her bare feet slapped against tile as they moved, every step sending fresh waves of pain through her surgical site. She could feel the stitches pulling, could feel warmth spreading across the bandages, probably bleeding again, definitely tearing something Dr. Brennan had carefully repaired. The hallway was chaos. Nurses were herding patients into rooms and locking doors. A security guard ran past them toward the stairwell, radio pressed to his ear, shouting coordinates that made no sense. An elderly patient in a wheelchair sat abandoned near the nurse's station, calling for help that wasn't coming. "Keep moving," Cole ordered, but Lena had already stopped. She grabbed the wheelchair handles and pushed the old man toward the nearest room where staff were gathering patients. A nurse, Jessica, the one with blonde highlights, stared at her in shock. "Cross, what are you—" "Take him," Lena said, her voice allowing no argument. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone unless you recognize their voice." Jessica nodded mutely and pulled the wheelchair inside. Cole grabbed Lena's wrist and hauled her forward again. "You can't save everyone right now. Watch me." They made it to the stairwell before the next problem hit. The door was propped open with a fire extinguisher, and the stairwell beyond was filled with smoke, not thick enough to be from a real fire, but enough to choke and blind. Cole pulled his tactical shirt up over his nose and mouth, then did the same with Lena's hospital gown. "Stay close," he said, and plunged into the smoke. They descended 2 flights before they heard voices below them. Not panicked civilians, not hospital staff. These were calm, organized, speaking in clipped phrases that marked them as trained operators. Third floor clear. Moving to fourth. Roger, secure the elevators. No one leaves. What about the target? Female, mid-30s, post-surgical. Recovery wing, room 314. Find her. Lena's blood turned to ice. They weren't here for a random attack. They were here for her. Cole pulled her back against the wall, his body shielding hers, his weapon trained down the stairwell. How many? He whispered. Lena closed her eyes and listened the way she'd been taught in a different life. Footsteps. At least 3, maybe 4. Moving with military precision, armed, judging by the weight of their steps and the metallic sounds of equipment shifting. 4, she breathed. Professional. Can you shoot? Not with a surgical wound. Can you run? Not far. Cole's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone again, typed something, then showed her the screen. Backup ETA 8 minutes. Too long. The footsteps were getting closer. They had maybe 30 seconds before whoever was hunting her reached their floor. Cole made a decision. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall bracket, tested its weight, then positioned himself at the corner where the stairwell turned. When I move, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Get to the ground floor and find the loading dock. There's an exit that leads to the staff parking lot. My team will be coming in that way. What about you? I'll buy you time. That's suicide. That's my job. He looked at her, and for a moment the professional soldier disappeared and she saw something raw underneath. You saved my life yesterday. Let me return the favor. The footsteps rounded the corner below. Cole moved. He threw the fire extinguisher down the stairs with enough force to crack concrete, and it exploded in a cloud of white chemical foam. Then he was moving down toward the chaos, weapon up, firing controlled shots that echoed like thunder in the enclosed space. Lena heard shouting, "Return fire!" the heavy thud of bodies hitting walls. She ran, up, not down. Her training screamed at her to follow Cole's orders, but her instincts screamed louder. If she went down, she'd lead them straight to the staff and patients sheltering on the lower floors. If she went up, she drew them away from civilians. Her legs were shaking by the time she hit the 5th floor. Her vision was tunneling from blood loss and pain. Her surgical site was definitely torn open now. She could feel blood running hot down her hip, soaking through the hospital gown. But she kept moving. The 5th floor was dark, abandoned, half renovated. Construction equipment sat silent in the corridors. Plastic sheeting hung from ceiling tiles. The smell of paint and drywall dust was thick enough to taste. Lena stumbled through the maze of unfinished rooms, looking for anything she could use. She found it in what would eventually be a supply closet, a construction worker's toolkit, abandoned in the rush to evacuate. She grabbed a utility knife, tested the blade, and kept moving. It wasn't much, but it was something. Behind her, she heard the stairwell door slam open. Footsteps. Heavy. Multiple sets. She came up here, a voice said. Male. Accent she couldn't place. Thermal shows residual heat signature. She's bleeding. Can't have gone far. Lena pressed herself against the wall, trying to control her breathing, trying to think through the pain and exhaustion. She was unarmed, injured, and cornered. But she'd been in worse situations. That ambush in hostile territory 5 years ago, 6 men down, 2 hours of sustained fire, no air support, no exfil. She'd kept 4 men alive through sheer will and training. She could do this. The footsteps split up, searchers spreading through the floor. Lena moved silently through the construction zone, using the plastic sheeting and equipment as cover. Her bare feet were silent on concrete. Her breathing was shallow and controlled. She was a ghost, a shadow, invisible. She made it 3 rooms before her body betrayed her. The blood loss finally caught up, and her vision grayed out. She stumbled, caught herself on a sawhorse, and the metal scraped against concrete with a sound like a scream in the silence. The footsteps converged on her position. Lena forced herself upright, knife in hand, and prepared to fight. 3 men emerged from the darkness, all dressed in black tactical gear, all armed with suppressed weapons. No insignia, no identification. Professional contractors, she guessed. Expensive ones. The lead man stopped when he saw her, his weapon trained center mass. Lena Cross, we've been looking for you. Congratulations, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her legs. Now what? Now you come with us. Our employer has questions about Task Force Sentinel. specifically about Operation Sand Viper and what you saw in Kandahar province. Lena's mind raced. Operation Sand Viper. That had been one of Sentinel's blackest ops, a raid on a compound that wasn't supposed to exist, eliminating targets whose names were never recorded. She'd been there as medical support, kept operators alive through a firefight that official records claim never happened. Someone wanted to know what she knew, which meant someone was covering something up. "I don't remember Kandahar," she lied. The man smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Then we'll help you remember." He took a step forward. Lena raised the utility knife, and then the window behind them exploded inward in a shower of glass and repelling lines, and 4 figures in full tactical gear came through like avenging angels, weapons up, voices shouting commands that brooked no argument. "Drop your weapons! Federal agents! On the ground now!" The contractors hesitated for half a second, long enough. The agents fired, controlled shots that dropped all 3 men before they could return fire. 2 went down hard. The third tried to run and caught a round in the thigh that sent him sprawling. The lead agent pulled off her helmet, and Lena recognized Special Agent Rebecca Ortiz. "You're a hard woman to keep safe, Miss Cross." Lena's legs finally gave out. She hit the ground hard, and Ortiz caught her before she could crack her head on concrete. "Easy, I've got you." "Cole," Lena managed through gritted teeth. "Major Cole, he's in the stairwell. He's fine. My team has him. He took out 2 hostiles before we breached." Ortiz was already applying pressure to Lena's bleeding surgical site with practiced efficiency. "You, on the other hand, are a mess. Medic!" One of the other agents rushed over with a trauma kit. Lena tried to focus on his face, but her vision was blurring again. She felt hands cutting away her hospital gown, felt the sharp sting of a needle in her arm. IV line, good. Felt pressure bandages being applied to the wound that was definitely torn wide open now. "Stay with me, Cross," Ortiz said, her voice sharp. "You don't get to die after making me chase you through a construction zone." "Wasn't trying to die," Lena whispered. "Trying to lead them away." "Mission accomplished." Ortiz's expression softened slightly. "Stupid, but effective." The world was graying out again, but Lena fought it. "How did you know to come?" "We didn't. We were already here. Been running protection detail on you since yesterday." Ortiz helped lift Lena onto a stretcher that had appeared from somewhere. Turns out, when a decorated war hero becomes a viral sensation, people notice. Not all of them friendly. They were moving now, carrying Lena through the construction zone toward the intact stairwell on the opposite side of the floor. Lena tried to keep track of details. How many agents, what weapons, what protocols, but everything was sliding out of focus. "The men who came for me," she managed. "Who sent them?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Ortiz's voice was grim. "They're professional contractors. No IDs, no insignia, no digital footprint. But someone paid a lot of money to grab you alive. And someone else leaked your service record to make sure the right people knew where to find you." They reached the stairwell. Cole was there, looking worse for wear. Blood on his face, tactical vest scorched from close-range gunfire, but very much alive. His eyes locked on Lena with an intensity that was almost physical. "You didn't follow orders," he said. "Never do," she replied. And then everything went black. When she woke again, she was back in surgery. Dr. Sarah Brennan's face hovered above her, masked and focused, her hands working with brutal precision. Lena tried to move, but restraints held her down. Standard procedure for awake patients during emergency repairs, she knew, but it still sent panic racing through her veins. "Welcome back," Brennan said without looking up from the surgical site. "You tore out half my work. I'm not impressed." "Sorry," Lena croaked. "You should be. This is going to hurt." It did. Even with local anesthesia and sedation, Lena felt every stitch, every repair, every moment of Brennan's hands inside her body putting broken pieces back together. She focused on the ceiling tiles, counting them, using an old trick from her combat medic days when she'd had to work through her own injuries. "You're lucky," Brennan said as she worked. "Another inch and you'd have bled out before they got you here. As it is, you've bought yourself another week in this hospital, at minimum." "Can't stay," Lena said. "Not safe. Safer than running around construction zones with a torn surgical wound." Brennan's voice was sharp. "What were you thinking?" I was thinking I'd rather bleed out than let them take me alive. Brennan's hand stilled for a moment. Then she continued working, her voice quieter. Who were they? People who want answers about things that don't officially exist. And you have those answers? I have memories. Whether they're answers depends on who's asking. Brennan finished the last suture and stepped back, letting her surgical nurse begin closing the outer layers. For what it's worth, you're either the bravest or stupidest patient I've ever had. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? Probably is. Brennan pulled off her gloves and moved to where Lena could see her without craning her neck. You're stable now. But Cross, I'm serious. You push yourself like this again and I won't be able to save you. Your body has limits. You need to respect them. I'll try. Don't try. Do. Brennan left and Lena was wheeled back to recovery. A different room this time, one without windows, with armed guards posted outside the door. She drifted in and out of consciousness for hours, aware of people coming and going, of voices discussing security protocols and federal jurisdiction and media containment. When she finally woke fully, it was dark outside. A single lamp burned in the corner of the room, casting long shadows. And sitting in the chair beside her bed, looking exhausted but alert, was Major Ethan Cole. You're still here, she said, her voice rough. Where else would I be? Anywhere but babysitting a wounded medic. You're not just a medic. Cole leaned forward. Those men who came for you, they weren't random. They knew about Operation Sand Viper. That operation is so classified that even most of the Pentagon doesn't know it happened. So either someone very high up leaked it, or someone who was there is talking. Lena's mind sharpened despite the drugs in her system. You think there's a mole? I think there's something bigger. Sand Viper wasn't just a raid. We eliminated a target who had connections to people in power. People who would prefer certain truths stayed buried. Cole's expression was grave. And now those people know you were there. They know what you saw. And they're afraid of what you might remember. I don't remember much, Lena admitted. I was focused on keeping operators alive. I didn't pay attention to intelligence or targets. But you were there. You heard things, saw things, maybe things you didn't even realize were important at the time. Cole pulled out a tablet and pulled up a photograph. Grainy, taken at night with IR equipment. It showed a compound, a courtyard, bodies on the ground. Do you remember this? Lena stared at the image, and memories came flooding back like ice water. The smell of cordite and blood. The sound of David's voice in her ear, steady despite the gunfire, telling her where to move, who to treat first. The weight of a dying operator in her arms. His last words asking her to tell his daughter he loved her. I remember, she whispered. What do you remember about the primary target? The one Sentinel was sent to eliminate? Lena closed her eyes, pulling up details she'd tried to bury. Male, mid-50s, someone important. The operators were talking about him like he was a high-value target. But when we breached, he was already dead. Executed. Single shot to the head. Professional. Cole's expression darkened. That's not in the official report. The official report says we eliminated him during the raid. But you're saying he was dead before you got there. Yes. Lena opened her eyes. Which means someone beat us to him. Someone who wanted him dead before we could take him alive. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. If the target was already dead when Sentinel arrived, then the entire operation had been a setup. A way to eliminate a threat while making it look like legitimate military action. And everyone who'd been there that night, everyone who could testify otherwise, was either dead or silent. Except for Lena. That's why they want you, Cole said quietly. You're a loose end, a witness who can prove the operation was fabricated. But I can't prove it. I have no evidence, just memories. Memories are evidence, especially when they contradict official narratives. Cole stood and paced to the window, his posture tense. Someone in the chain of command authorized Sand Viper, knowing the target was already dead. Someone used American soldiers as cover for an assassination, and now that you're in the public eye, they're panicking. Lena felt the pieces falling into place, each one more damning than the last. So what do? We find out who authorized the operation. We find out who killed the target before we got there, and we make sure the truth comes out before they can silence you permanently. Cole turned back to face her. but I can't do it without your help. I need you to remember everything you can about that night, every detail, every conversation, every face. That could take days, and I don't have days. Then we buy you time. Cole's expression hardened into something fierce and determined. Starting with making sure everyone knows you're under federal protection. Starting with making sure the media can't ignore you. And starting with making sure whoever's after you knows that touching you will bring down more heat than they can handle. How? By telling your story. All of it. The classified parts, the buried parts, the parts that powerful people don't want told. He met her eyes. Are you willing to do that? Lena thought about David, about the operators who died that night, about the years she'd spent hiding from the truth because facing it was too painful. She thought about the hospital that had dismissed her, the doctor who'd tried to break her, the system that had taught her to stay quiet and invisible. She was done being quiet. She was done being invisible. Yes, she said, I'll tell the truth. All of it. Cole nodded with satisfaction. Good, because in about 6 hours, you're going to have the biggest audience you've ever had. The president's chief of staff just requested a meeting with you. Apparently, your story has reached levels of government that want answers. The president knows about me? The president knows a decorated veteran became a viral hero and then got attacked in a hospital by unknown operatives. That kind of thing demands answers. Cole pulled out his phone and showed her a news headline. Mystery nurse's military past revealed. Task Force Sentinel connection under investigation. Someone leaked it, Lena said. Someone wanted it leaked. The question is who and why? Cole pocketed his phone. But whoever they are, they just made you untouchable. You're too visible now. Killing you would confirm everything you're saying. So instead they'll try to discredit me. Probably, which is why we need to get ahead of the narrative. He moved back to the chair and sat down, leaning forward with intensity. I need you to write down everything you remember about Sand Viper. Every detail. Names, dates, coordinates, conversations. Everything. Can you do that? Lena nodded slowly. I can try. Don't try. Do. Cole smiled slightly. Someone once told me that. Before Lena could respond, the door opened and Special Agent Ortiz entered, looking even more exhausted than before. She was followed by 2 men in dark suits, Secret Service, judging by their bearing and the telltale earpieces. Miss Cross, Ortiz said, her tone formal, these gentlemen are here to escort you to a secure location for the meeting tomorrow. We're moving you tonight. I'm not cleared for transport, Lena protested. Dr. Brennan is coming with us. She'll monitor you during transit. Ortiz's expression brooked no argument. This isn't optional. The contractors who attacked you today were just the advance team. Intelligence suggests a larger operation is being planned. We need you somewhere they can't reach. Lena looked at Cole. Are you coming? I'm already there. He stood. My entire team is being reassigned to your protection detail. You saved my life. That means I owe you, and I pay my debts. They moved her an hour later under cover of darkness in an unmarked ambulance surrounded by federal vehicles. Dr. Brennan rode in the back with her, monitoring vitals and adjusting medications while armed agents scanned the streets for threats. They drove for 90 minutes, winding through back roads and industrial areas, before finally pulling into what looked like an abandoned warehouse. But inside the warehouse was anything but abandoned. It had been converted into a secure medical facility, complete with operating rooms, recovery bays, and command centers bristling with computer equipment. Federal agents and military personnel moved through the space with practiced efficiency. Welcome to Site 17, Ortiz said as they wheeled Lena inside. One of several secure facilities maintained for high-value witnesses and assets. You'll be safe here. For how long? Lena asked. As long as it takes. They set her up in a private room that looked more like a hospital suite than a safe house. Medical equipment, comfortable bed, even a window, though Lena suspected the view was artificially generated. Doctor, Brennan examined her surgical site, declared it stable despite the abuse, and gave her stern instructions about rest and recovery. I mean it this time, Brennan said. You stay in this bed. No heroics, no running, no climbing out windows or fighting mercenaries. You rest. Yes, ma'am. Brennan left and Lena was finally alone. She lay in the quiet, listening to the hum of ventilation and the distant murmur of voices and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. 2 days ago, she'd been an invisible nurse on administrative leave. Now she was a federal asset under military protection, preparing to testify about classified operations to some of the most powerful people in government. The flash drive was still in her pocket. She'd somehow managed to keep it through surgery and the evacuation. She pulled it out, turned it over in her hands, and finally plugged it into the tablet someone had left on her bedside table. The files loaded slowly, revealing years of her life she'd tried to forget. Mission reports, after-action reviews, commendations, photos of her in uniform, younger and harder, surrounded by men who were now mostly dead. And then she found the file labeled Operation Sandviper, classified. She opened it and began to read. 3 hours later, she had the pieces. Not all of them, but enough to see the shape of what had been hidden. The target hadn't just been executed before Sentinel arrived. He'd been killed by someone in the American intelligence community. Someone who knew he was about to talk, about to expose a network of corruption that reached into the highest levels of government. The raid had been cover for an assassination, and everyone involved had been told it was a legitimate military operation. Everyone except the target. And now Lena had proof. She was still staring at the screen when Major Cole entered, carrying coffee and looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Found something?" he asked. "Found everything," she replied, turning the tablet so he could see. "Cole, this goes deeper than we thought. The target, his name was Rashid Ahmadi, by the way. He wasn't a terrorist. He was an intelligence asset. Our intelligence asset. And someone decided he was more dangerous alive than dead." Cole read silently, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is treason." "This is murder," Lena corrected. "Treason is just the legal term." "Who authorized this?" "That's what I'm about to find out." She closed the tablet. "Because tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with people who either ordered this or covered it up, and I'm going to make them answer for it." Cole looked at her with something approaching awe. "You know they're going to try to destroy you. Everything you've built, your reputation, your life. They'll make you look like a liar or worse." "Let them try." Lena's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I've spent 3 years being quiet, being invisible, letting people like Dr. Holt walk all over me because I thought I deserved it, because I thought I'd failed." She met his eyes. "But I didn't fail. I did my job. And the people who did fail, the people who betrayed Rashid Ahmadi and every operator on that mission, they're about to face justice." Cole smiled, and it was fierce and proud. "There's the soldier I read about." "She was always here," Lena said quietly. "Just buried under guilt and exhaustion. But I'm done being buried." They talked through the night, going over details, preparing for the meeting, building a case that couldn't be dismissed or ignored. And as dawn broke over the secure facility, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. At 8:30, Lena was wheeled into a conference room that looked like something from a spy thriller, windowless, soundproofed, with technology that probably cost more than her annual salary. A long table dominated the center. At the far end sat 3 people, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in power, a man in his 50s wearing a military uniform covered in ribbons and stars, and another man in an expensive suit who screamed, "White House Attorney!" "Miss Cross," the woman said, her voice professionally neutral. "I'm Margaret Dalton, Deputy Director of National Intelligence. This is General Raymond Hayes and Robert Sinclair, Counsel to the President. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "I didn't have much choice," Lena replied. Dalton's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Fair point. Let's get to it, shall we? We understand you have information about Operation Sandviper." "I have questions about Operation Sandviper," Lena corrected, starting with why I was told the mission was to eliminate a high-value terrorist target when the real purpose was to cover up an assassination. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. General Hayes leaned forward, his face carved from granite. "That's a serious accusation." "It's a provable fact." Lena pulled out the flash drive. "This contains the full operation file, including details that were scrubbed from the official report. Details like the fact that Rashid Ahmadi was already dead when we breached. Details like the fact that he was one of our assets, not an enemy combatant. Details like the fact that someone in our own government decided he was too dangerous to live. Dalton's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Where did you get that file? Someone sent it to me anonymously, someone who apparently thinks the truth should come out. That file is classified at the highest level. Possessing it is a federal crime. Then arrest me, Lena said calmly. But before you do, you might want to know that I've made copies. And if anything happens to me, those copies go to every major news organization in the country. The attorney, Sinclair, spoke for the first time. Miss Cross, you're playing a dangerous game. I'm not playing anything. I'm asking for justice for the men who died that night believing they were serving their country when really they were being used as pawns in someone's cover-up. Lena's voice was steady, implacable. Someone in this government sent operators into a kill box and lied about why. Someone decided that protecting their secrets was more important than American lives, and I want to know who. Silence filled the room like pressure before an explosion. Finally, Dalton spoke. What do you want, Miss Cross? I want the truth, Lena said simply. I want a full investigation into who authorized Sand Viper and why. I want the operators who died that night to be honored properly, not buried under lies. And I want whoever ordered Rashid Ahmadi's murder to face consequences. And if we can't give you that, then I go public. All of it. Every classified detail, every name, every crime. Lena met Dalton's eyes without flinching. I spent 5 years trying to forget what happened that night. I'm done forgetting, so you can either help me expose the truth, or you can watch me do it alone. Your choice. Dalton studied her for a long moment, then turned to the general. General Hayes? Hayes sighed, suddenly looking older than his years. She's right. Sand Viper was a clusterfuck from the start. I had my suspicions at the time, but I was overruled. Someone with juice wanted Ahmadi dead, and they used military assets to make it happen. Do you know who? Lena asked. I have theories, but no proof. Then let's find proof. Lena leaned forward despite the pain in her side. You have the resources. You have the authority. You can dig deeper than I ever could. So dig. Find out who authorized that operation. Find out who killed Ahmadi, and find out why they're so desperate to silence me now. Dalton and Hayes exchanged a long look. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Finally, Dalton nodded. All right, Miss Cross. You'll get your investigation. But it stays internal. No media, no public statements. You work with us, not against us. Deal, Lena said. But I keep the flash drive. Insurance. Fair enough. Dalton stood. Welcome to the most complicated week of your life. As Lena was wheeled out of the conference room, she felt exhaustion and triumph warring in her chest. She'd done it. She'd stood up to power and refused to back down. She'd demanded justice and gotten it. But as the doors closed behind her, she heard Dalton's voice one more time, speaking quietly to someone on the phone. Yes, sir. We have a situation. The cross woman knows too much, and she's too visible to eliminate quietly. We're going to need to get creative. Lena heard every word through the conference room door that hadn't quite sealed shut. The wheelchair stopped moving as the orderly pushing her paused to answer his phone. And in that suspended moment, Margaret Dalton's voice drifted through the gap like smoke carrying poison. Yes, sir. We have a situation. The cross woman knows too much, and she's too visible to eliminate quietly. We're going to need to get creative. The orderly finished his call and resumed pushing, oblivious. Lena's hands gripped the wheelchair arms hard enough to leave marks. Her mind was already moving through contingencies, calculating angles, assessing threats. They'd just played her. The promises of investigation and justice were theater. Stalling tactics while they figured out how to neutralize her without creating a martyr. She'd walked right into it. No. She'd rolled into it, wounded and foolish enough to believe that truth mattered more than power. Major Cole was waiting in the recovery room when they brought her back. One look at her face and his expression sharpened. What happened? I need to talk to you, she said quietly, waiting until the orderly left. Alone. And I need you to not react to what I'm about to say. Cole pulled a small device from his pocket, a white noise generator, Lena recognized, and activated it. We're clear. Talk. She told him what she'd overheard. Cole's jaw tightened with each word, but his training held. When she finished, he was silent for 10 seconds, thinking. They're going to discredit you first, he said finally. Destroy your credibility so that when they move against you, nobody believes your story. They'll paint you as unstable, unreliable, maybe even complicit. How long do we have? Hours? Maybe less. They'll want to control the narrative before you can. Cole moved to the window, artificial, as she'd suspected, and stared at the fabricated view. We need to get ahead of this. How? He turned back to her, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. By doing exactly what they don't expect. By giving them so much truth that they choke on it. 20 minutes later, Lena was on a secure video call with someone Cole identified only as a friend in media. The woman on screen was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of face that had broken 1,000 stories and buried 1,000 careers. Her name was Diana Reeves, and she worked for the largest investigative news network in the country. Major Cole doesn't make calls like this lightly, Reeves said without preamble. So I'm listening. Lena took a breath. I have evidence of a classified military operation that was used to cover up an assassination. I have proof that American soldiers were sent into hostile territory under false pretenses, and that at least 2 of them died because someone in our government needed to hide a crime. And I have about 6 hours before the people responsible try to bury me and the truth together. Reeves leaned forward. I'm going to need more than that. You'll get it. But first, I need your word that this goes live tonight. No delays, no clearance from government sources. You run it, or I take it somewhere else. I don't make promises until I see evidence. Lena held up the flash drive. Operation Sand Viper. Full mission files, including details that contradict the official record. You verify it independently. I know you have sources who can do that, and then you run it. Tonight. Reeves studied her through the screen, calculating. Why should I believe you're not a disgruntled ex-soldier with an axe to grind? Because I'm the viral hero who took a bullet for a stranger, Lena said flatly. Because I'm the nurse who was attacked by professional contractors in a hospital while under federal protection. And because if you don't run this story, I'll be dead by morning and you'll spend the rest of your career wondering if you could have stopped it. Silence stretched across the digital connection. Send me the file, Reeves said. I'll have it verified within 2 hours. If it checks out, we go live at 8 p.m. Eastern. That gives you 6 hours to stay alive. The call ended. Cole looked at Lena with something approaching respect. That was a hell of a gamble. It's not a gamble if it's the only move. Lena reached for the tablet, her hand steady despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. Now we need to make sure I survive long enough to see it air. But survival, as it turned out, was about to get complicated. The first sign came 30 minutes later when the facility's internet went down. Not just slow, completely dead, along with cell service and even the hardline connections. Someone had cut them off from the outside world. Cole was on his feet instantly, weapon drawn. That's not an accident. How long until they breach? Lena asked, already pulling herself out of bed despite the screaming protest from her surgical wound. Depends on who they are. Cole moved to the door, checked the corridor. Empty, but the silence was wrong. Too complete. Could be minutes. Could be seconds. We need to move. You can barely walk. Then you'll have to carry me. Again. Before Cole could argue, the lights went out. Emergency power didn't kick in this time. Someone had disabled the backup generators. In the darkness, Lena heard the distinctive sound of breaching charges being set on multiple entry points. They're not even pretending this is legitimate, Cole said, his voice tight with fury. This is an execution. He grabbed Lena, lifting her bodily despite her protests, and ran. They made it maybe 20 feet before the charges detonated. 3 simultaneous explosions that shook the building and filled the corridors with smoke and debris. Through the chaos, Lena heard boots and shouted commands in clipped military cadence. Multiple targets, north wing. Eliminate with extreme prejudice. Cole carried her through a maze of hallways, moving on instinct and training through pitch darkness. Behind them, gunfire erupted. The federal agents assigned to protect her were engaging the assault team, buying seconds with their lives. Lena heard men screaming, heard the thud of bodies hitting walls, heard the wet sounds of close-quarters combat. We can't leave them, she said. They're buying us time. Don't waste it. Cole kicked open a door and they tumbled into what looked like a maintenance corridor, all exposed pipes and concrete. He set her down, breathing hard. Can you walk? Do I have a choice? Not really. They moved together through the maintenance tunnels, Lena leaning heavily on Cole, each step sending fresh waves of agony through her abdomen. She could feel wetness spreading across the bandages, definitely bleeding again, possibly tearing sutures. Dr. Brennan was going to be furious, assuming Lena lived long enough to see her again. They emerged into what looked like an underground parking garage. A handful of vehicles sat in assigned spaces, all of them with federal plates. Cole moved to the nearest SUV, smashed the window with his elbow, and hot-wired it in under 30 seconds. Where did you learn that? Lena asked as she climbed painfully into the passenger seat. Classified. Cole gunned the engine and they peeled out, tires screaming against concrete. Behind them, figures emerged from the maintenance entrance, weapons tracking their movement. Bullets sparked off the SUV's armored rear panel. They burst out of the garage into blinding daylight, and Cole immediately started executing evasive maneuvers, sharp turns, sudden lane changes, using other traffic as cover. Lena gripped the door handle and tried not to think about what all this movement was doing to her surgical site. Where are we going? She asked through gritted teeth. Somewhere public, somewhere with cameras and witnesses. Cole's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. They can't kill you if the whole world is watching. They just tried to kill me in a federal facility. That facility was off the books. Deniable. But out here, he gestured at the city rising around them. Out here, you're still the viral hero, still the nurse who saved a soldier. They can't make you disappear without explaining why. He was right. The story had taken on a life of its own. Social media was still exploding with videos and speculation. News crews were camped outside Redwood City Medical. The hashtag Nurse Hero was trending globally. Lena had become a symbol, and symbols were harder to kill quietly than witnesses. Cole's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then cursed. Dalton just issued a statement saying you've been kidnapped by hostile actors. They're spinning you as a victim who needs to be rescued. Rescued and silenced. Exactly. Cole took another sharp turn, heading toward the city center. But they made a mistake. They're moving too fast, too obviously. People are going to start asking questions. Not if they control the narrative. Lena pulled out her own phone, still functional, surprisingly, and started recording a video. Which is why I'm about to give them a narrative they can't control. She hit record and started speaking directly to the camera, her voice steady despite the pain and fear. She identified herself, confirmed she was with Major Cole, and stated clearly that she had not been kidnapped. She had escaped an assassination attempt at a federal facility. She named Margaret Dalton and described what she'd overheard. She mentioned Operation Sand Viper and Rashid Ahmadi and the lies that had gotten American soldiers killed. And then she did something that would either save her life or end it. She gave her exact location and invited anyone who was watching to come find her. Civilians with cameras, media with questions, anyone who wanted proof that she was alive and telling the truth. I'm going to the steps of City Hall, she said to the camera. In 10 minutes. If I don't make it, or if something happens to me, you'll know who's responsible, and you'll know why. Don't let them bury this. Don't let them bury the truth. She posted the video to every social media platform she could reach, then sent copies to Diana Reeves, to Major Cole's entire chain of command, and to 3 different civil rights organizations. Within 60 seconds, it had been viewed 10,000 times. Within 2 minutes, 50,000. By the time they reached City Hall, the video had gone viral for the second time in 3 days. And the steps of City Hall were already filling with people. Cole parked the SUV and helped Lena out. She was pale, shaking, her hospital gown soaked with blood. But she walked on her own power up those marble steps, while hundreds of phones captured every moment. News crews were rushing to set up. Police were trying to control the crowd. And somewhere in the chaos, Lena heard someone start chanting her name. Lena! 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 Others picked it up. Within seconds, hundreds of voices were chanting in unison, a sound that echoed off the buildings like thunder. Cole positioned himself beside her, his presence a wall of protection, while Lena faced the cameras and the crowd and the moment she'd been running from for 5 years. My name is Lena Cross, she said, and her voice carried over the noise, amplified by dozens of phones and cameras. 3 days ago, I did what anyone should do. I tried to save a life. But that action put me in a spotlight that made powerful people nervous. Nervous because I know things they want buried. Things about military operations conducted under false pretenses. Things about American soldiers used as pawns in political games. Things about murder dressed up as patriotism. She paused, letting the words sink in. The crowd had gone silent. Every camera was fixed on her. Right now, there are people in our government who are deciding how to silence me. They've already tried twice. They'll probably try again. But I'm done being silent. I'm done being invisible. And I'm done protecting people who value their secrets more than American lives. She held up the flash drive. This contains evidence. Real evidence. It's already been sent to journalists who will verify and publish it. But I wanted you to know, wanted everyone to know, that if something happens to me, it's not an accident. It's not a tragedy. It's murder. And the people responsible have names and faces and positions of power. A reporter pushed to the front, shouting questions. Others followed. The police were overwhelmed. The crowd was pressing closer, not threateningly, but protectively, as if their physical presence could shield her. And then the black SUVs arrived. 4 of them, moving in formation, cutting through the crowd with practiced precision. They stopped at the base of the steps, and men in dark suits emerged. Not the contractors from before. These were official. Federal. One of them was Robert Sinclair, the White House attorney from the morning meeting. He climbed the steps slowly, his face professionally neutral. When he reached Lena, he spoke loud enough for the cameras to hear. "Miss Cross, I'm here to escort you to a secure location where we can discuss—" "No," Lena said simply. Sinclair blinked. "I'm sorry?" "No. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not getting in your vehicles. I'm not disappearing into another secure location so you can figure out how to eliminate me quietly." She gestured to the crowd, the cameras, the watching world. "I'm staying right here, where everyone can see me, where witnesses can testify to what happens next." Sinclair's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold underneath. "Miss Cross, you're making this very difficult." "Good. It should be difficult. Covering up murder should be difficult." "You don't know what you're talking about. You're traumatized, possibly mentally unstable." "There it is," Cole interjected, his voice cutting. "The discredit campaign. You're going to paint her as crazy, claim she's delusional, maybe even suggest she's a threat to herself. Then when she dies under mysterious circumstances, everyone will think it was inevitable." Sinclair turned to Cole with barely concealed fury. "Major, you're dangerously close to insubordination. I passed insubordination about an hour ago. This is treason prevention." Cole pulled out his own phone, started recording. "Go ahead. Tell us why a decorated combat medic needs to be silenced. Tell these cameras why the truth about Operation Sand Viper is worth killing American citizens to protect." Sinclair's jaw worked silently. He was trapped, and he knew it. Every word, every gesture was being captured and broadcast in real time. Whatever move he made next would be scrutinized by millions. He chose retreat. "Miss Cross, we'll be in touch," he said stiffly, then turned and walked back to the SUVs. They pulled away, leaving Lena standing on the steps with Cole beside her and an army of citizens at her back. She'd won. For now. But even as the crowd celebrated and the reporters shouted questions and social media exploded with support, Lena knew this was just the opening move. The real battle was still coming. The call from Diana Reeves came 2 hours later. Lena was in an actual hospital now. Not Redwood City Medical, but a larger facility downtown, surrounded by private security hired by a coalition of veteran advocacy groups. Dr. Brennan had been summoned and was currently re-repairing the damage Lena had done to her surgical site, muttering about stubborn patients and death wishes. "We verified your files," Reeves said without preamble. "Every detail checks out. Operation Sand Viper happened exactly the way you described. Rashid Ahmadi was already dead when Sentinel arrived, and the authorization for the operation came from someone very high up the chain." "Who?" Lena asked, her voice rough from exhaustion and pain medication. "Senator Mitchell Carver. He was on the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, still is. He's also currently running for president." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. A presidential candidate couldn't afford a scandal involving the murder of a foreign intelligence asset, couldn't afford questions about unauthorized military operations, couldn't afford a witness who could testify to the truth. He's the one who ordered my assassination, Lena said. We can't prove that, not yet. But we can prove he authorized Sand Viper knowing the target was already dead. We can prove he lied to Congress about it. And we can prove he's been covering it up ever since. Reeves paused. We're running the story at 8. Full exposure, names, documents, everything. By tomorrow morning, Senator Carver's presidential campaign will be dead. And there will be calls for criminal investigations. When do I go on record? You already are. That video you posted at City Hall? We're using it. You've given us everything we need. The interview aired at 8 p.m. Eastern, exactly as promised. Lena watched from her hospital bed, Cole on one side, doctor, Brennan on the other, as Diana Reeves methodically dismantled 5 years of lies. The documents were displayed. The timeline was reconstructed. Expert testimony from military analysts confirmed the inconsistencies in the official report. And through it all, Lena's face was shown, the viral hero, the wounded nurse, the soldier who'd been betrayed by her own government. By 8:30, social media was on fire. By 9, members of Congress were calling for investigations. By 9:30, Senator Carver's campaign headquarters was surrounded by protesters and reporters. And by 10 p.m., Senator Mitchell Carver was holding an emergency press conference. He stood behind a podium, flanked by lawyers and advisors, his face carved from stone. The allegations made tonight are baseless and defamatory. I have served this country with honor for 30 years. I would never authorize illegal operations or endanger American lives. Ms. Cross is clearly a troubled individual who has allowed trauma and public attention to warp her perception of events. I sympathize with her situation, but I cannot allow lies to go unchallenged. A reporter shouted from the crowd. Senator, do you deny authorizing Operation Sand Viper? I authorized a legitimate counterterrorism operation based on intelligence provided by the Defense Department. If there were operational failures, those should be investigated. But to suggest I had knowledge of any impropriety is absurd. What about Rashid Ahmadi? Did you know he was already dead when you sent soldiers to eliminate him? Carver's expression flickered. I don't discuss classified operations in public forums. So you're not denying it. This press conference is over. Carver turned and walked away, leaving chaos in his wake. Lena watched the coverage with grim satisfaction. He's going to fight this. Let him, Cole said. Every day he fights is another day of scrutiny, another day of investigations, another day where the truth gets harder to hide. He looked at her with quiet pride. You did it. You brought down one of the most powerful men in government. I started it, Lena corrected. Now the system has to finish it. But the system, as it turned out, had one more surprise waiting. It came at midnight when Lena was finally drifting off to sleep despite the pain and the adrenaline and the endless loop of news coverage playing in her mind. Her door opened quietly and a figure slipped inside. Not a nurse, not security, someone who moved with the kind of stealth that came from professional training. Lena's eyes snapped open. Her hand went to the panic button beside her bed. Don't, the figure said, and she recognized the voice. Margaret Dalton, the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, looked older and more tired than she had that morning. She held up empty hands. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? Dalton moved to the window, keeping her distance. Because you deserve to know the truth, the whole truth. I already know the truth. Carver ordered the assassination and used military assets to cover it up. That's part of it. But it's not all of it. Dalton turned to face her. Rashid Ahmadi wasn't killed by American intelligence. He was killed by his own people, elements within the Afghan government who discovered he was feeding information to us. They executed him and made it look like we did it, hoping to destroy his credibility and ours simultaneously. Lena's mind raced. So, Sand Viper was legitimate? It was supposed to be. But by the time Sentinel arrived, Ahmadi was already dead. The operation became a cover-up by accident, not design. And when Senator Carver realized what had happened, he made a choice. He could admit the failure publicly, potentially compromising other operations and assets, or he could classify everything and hope it stayed buried. He chose wrong. He chose politically. And then, when you surfaced, when you became visible and heroic and impossible to ignore, he panicked. He made decisions that turned an operational failure into a criminal conspiracy. Dalton's expression was unreadable, but here's what you need to understand. I'm not on his side. I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting the dozens of other assets and operations that could be compromised if this story spirals out of control. So why tell me this? Because you're smart enough to understand nuance. You're experienced enough to know that intelligence work exists in gray areas. And you're principled enough that I think I can trust you to consider the consequences. Dalton pulled out a folder and set it on the table beside Lena's bed. This contains information about 5 active operations that could be compromised if certain details about Ahmadi's network become public. Not the truth about Sand Viper, that's already out and can't be contained, but operational details. Names of assets, locations of safe houses, the kind of information that gets people killed. Lena stared at the folder. You're asking me to censor myself. I'm asking you to be careful, to work with us instead of against us. Senator Carver is finished. His campaign is over. Investigations are inevitable. He'll face consequences. But we don't need to burn down the entire intelligence apparatus to make him pay for his mistakes. What do you want from me? Coordinate with us. Before you release any additional information, let us review it. We'll redact only what genuinely endangers lives, and we'll do it transparently. You keep control. We keep people safe. Everyone wins. Lena looked at the folder, then back at Dalton. And if I don't agree, then I walk out of here and we continue as we have been. You releasing information, us trying to contain damage, more people getting caught in the crossfire. Dalton's voice was tired but honest. I don't want that. You don't want that. So let's find a better way. For a long moment, Lena considered. This woman had been part of the apparatus trying to silence her, had been in that conference room discussing how to eliminate her. But she was also here now, alone, unarmed, offering something that looked suspiciously like partnership. I'll review what you're asking me to protect, Lena said finally. But I'm not making any promises, and if I think you're using this to cover up crimes, the deal is off. Fair. Dalton moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, what you did took courage. Real courage. The kind we need more of in this business. You have a strange way of showing appreciation. You tried to have me killed. I tried to solve a problem. You forced me to solve it differently. Better, probably. Dalton's smile was thin and sad. That's how the system improves. People like you refusing to disappear. She left, and Lena was alone with the folder and her thoughts, and the weight of decisions still to come. She opened the folder, read through the operational details, saw the names of assets, real people with families, people whose lives would be forfeit if their identities became public. Saw safe house locations that, if compromised, would collapse entire intelligence networks. And she understood what Dalton was really offering. Not silence, but partnership. Not censorship, but collaboration. It was the kind of gray area compromise that the old Lena, the one who'd hidden for 5 years, would have rejected out of anger and principle. But this Lena, the one who'd faced down assassins and senators in her own buried past, could see the larger picture. Justice didn't have to mean destruction. Truth didn't have to mean exposing every secret to the light. Sometimes the bravest thing was knowing when to push and when to protect. She picked up her phone and texted Diana Reeves. Need to talk before you run anything else. Have information that requires careful handling. The response came immediately. Understood. Tomorrow morning? Yes. Lena set down the phone and finally let herself relax into the pillows. Her body was screaming. The surgical wound, the exhaustion, the accumulated trauma of 3 impossible days. But her mind was clear. She'd done it. She'd exposed the truth about Sand Viper. She'd brought down Senator Carver. She'd survived assassination attempts and stood up to power. She'd taken the silence that had defined her for 5 years and shattered it so loudly the echoes would be heard for decades. But as she drifted toward sleep, one thought nagged at her. Dalton had said the Afghan government killed Ahmadi, not American intelligence. But how had they known he was an asset? How had they known exactly when and where to execute him before Sentinel arrived? Someone had told them. Someone with access to classified American intelligence had betrayed Ahmadi to his enemies. And that someone was still out there. Lena's eyes opened in the darkness, exhaustion forgotten, as a new terrible understanding crystallized. The conspiracy didn't end with Senator Carver. It had barely begun. The conspiracy didn't end with Senator Carver. It had barely begun. Lena sat upright in the hospital bed, ignoring the protest from her surgical wound, her mind racing through the implications. Rashid Ahmadi had been betrayed by someone with access to American intelligence, someone who knew he was an asset, knew his location, knew the exact timing of Sentinel's operation. That kind of information didn't leak by accident. It was sold. She grabbed her phone and called Cole. He answered on the first ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. "What's wrong?" "Everything," Lena said. "Dalton was just here. She told me Ahmadi was killed by Afghan government elements, not us." "But Cole, how did they know? How did they know exactly when to hit him before we arrived?" Silence on the other end as Cole processed. Then, quietly, "A mole. A mole who's still active, still in position, still selling intelligence." Lena's voice was urgent. Carver was a politician covering his mistakes, but someone else, someone with operational access, has been betraying assets for years. Ahmadi was just one victim. "If you're right, this goes deeper than anything we've exposed so far." "I am right, and I need to prove it before they realize I know." Cole was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" "Access to the full operational files on Sand Viper. Not the sanitized version I have. Everything. Communication logs, personnel rosters, intelligence distribution lists, anyone who knew the details of that mission." "That's going to be difficult to get without tipping off whoever we're looking for." "Then we don't ask permission." Lena's tone left no room for argument. "You have contacts, people who owe you favors. Use them." "Lena, if we're wrong about this, we're not wrong. Someone betrayed Ahmadi and got American soldiers killed in the process. Someone who's probably still out there selling secrets. We find them, or more people die." Another pause. "I'll make some calls." The next morning brought chaos of a different kind. Lena woke to find her hospital room surrounded by reporters and camera crews being held back by overwhelmed security. Outside her window, third floor, she noted, a crowd had gathered, holding signs that read "Justice for Lena" and "Protect our heroes" and "Carver for prison." Dr. Brennan appeared, looking harried. "You've become a political movement overnight. The hospital is going insane. We've had 3 senators, 2 representatives, and the governor's office all call asking about your condition." "What did you tell them?" "That you're recovering and not taking visitors." Brennan checked Lena's vitals with practiced efficiency. "Your surgical site is holding, barely, but Cross, you need to actually rest. Your body can't keep taking this abuse." "I'll rest when this is over." "It is over. Carver's done. You won." "I won a battle, not the war." Lena met Brennan's eyes. "Can I ask you something, off the record?" Brennan's expression became guarded. "Depends on the question." "When you operated on me that first time after the plaza, did anyone try to access my medical records? Anyone who wasn't directly involved in my care?" Brennan's silence was answer enough. "Who?" Lena pressed. "I can't tell you that. Patient privacy laws?" "Dr. Brennan, someone tried to kill me twice. Someone who needed to know if I was stable enough to move, vulnerable enough to eliminate. If they accessed my records, they left a trail, and I need to know who they are." Brennan looked at her for a long moment, then made a decision. She pulled out her phone, typed something, and showed Lena the screen. A name. Dr. Marcus Holt. Lena's blood turned to ice. "He accessed my records? Multiple times, including twice on days when he wasn't even scheduled to work." Brennan's voice was tight with anger. "I flagged it with administration, but they dismissed it as professional concern. Said he was just checking on a staff member. He tried to get me fired hours before I saved Cole's life. He hated me. Why would he suddenly care about my medical condition?" Lena's mind was racing. "Unless he was reporting to someone, keeping them updated on whether I was vulnerable. That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." Lena grabbed her phone. "I need to talk to Cole. Now." But before she could dial, the door opened and Major Ethan Cole walked in, his face grim. He was carrying a tablet and moving with the kind of controlled urgency that meant bad news. "We need to talk," he said. "Privately." Brennan took the hint and left. Cole activated his white noise generator and pulled up a chair close to Lena's bed. "I got the files," he said without preamble. "Full operational data on Sand Viper. And you were right. Someone leaked the mission details to hostile elements. But it's worse than we thought." He turned the tablet so she could see. The screen showed a communication intercept dated 2 days before the Sand Viper operation. This is a message from someone with access to our intelligence networks to a contact in Kabul, Cole explained. It contains operational details about Sentinel's mission, target location, timing, even the names of operators involved. It was sent 48 hours before we deployed, which gave Ahmadi's enemies plenty of time to kill him and set up an ambush. Who sent it? Lena demanded. The message was routed through multiple proxies to hide the sender, but intelligence analysts were able to trace it back to a single computer terminal at Fort Hamilton. Cole's expression was stone. The same facility where Colonel Draven briefed me about your background. The same facility where my team is based. The implications hit Lena like a physical blow. Someone in your command structure is the mole. Not just someone. Someone senior enough to have access to classified operation files. Cole pulled up another file. I cross-referenced everyone who had access to Sand Viper details with everyone who knew about your background, your location, your medical condition. There's only one name that appears on every list. He showed her the screen. Colonel David Draven. Lena stared at the name, her mind refusing to process it. Draven was Cole's commanding officer, a decorated career soldier with 30 years of service, the man who'd ordered Cole's team to protect her. It doesn't make sense, she said. Why would he protect me if he wanted me dead? He didn't protect you, he isolated you, put you in a secure facility where he controlled access and communications, made it look like protection while actually setting you up for elimination. Cole's voice was bitter with betrayal. And when that failed, when you escaped and went public, he pivoted, started feeding you information through Dalton, trying to control what you knew and when you released it. The folder Dalton gave me last night, the one with active operations, probably contains intelligence Draven wants exposed to cover his own tracks. Burn assets he's already sold to make it look like collateral damage from your investigation instead of deliberate betrayal. Lena felt rage building in her chest, hot and clean and focused. We need proof, something undeniable. We have the communication intercept. We have access logs showing Draven viewing your medical records through Holt's credentials. Wait, Holt's credentials? Draven has been using Holt as an unwitting access point. Every time Holt logged into your records, Draven was piggybacking the session from his own terminal. Holt probably doesn't even know. Cole pulled up more files. Draven has been manipulating him for months, feeding his resentment of you, encouraging him to document every mistake, building a paper trail that would make it easy to discredit you if needed. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Holt's increasing hostility, the formal complaint that led to her suspension, the timing of everything. It had all been orchestrated to keep Lena vulnerable and isolated, to make her disappearance plausible. We need to bring him in, Lena said. Now, before he realizes we know. Already in motion, Cole checked his phone. I contacted the Inspector General's office 2 hours ago. They're executing a raid on Draven's office and residence as we speak. By the time he figures out what's happening, he'll be in federal custody. But even as he spoke, Cole's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went gray. Draven's gone, he said flatly. His office was empty. Computer hard drive destroyed. Personal files shredded. He cleared out sometime in the last 4 hours. He knew, Lena said. Someone tipped him off. Or he's been monitoring our communications. He'd have the technical capability. Cole was already moving toward the door. I need to coordinate with... The lights went out. Not just in Lena's room, the entire hospital plunged into darkness. And this time, when emergency power kicked in, it was accompanied by the sharp wail of the fire alarm and the distinctive sound of the building's security protocols engaging. Lockdown, Cole said, weapon already drawn. He's here. That's impossible. Security answers to federal protocols, and Draven has the credentials to override them. Cole moved to the door, checked the corridor. He's burning everything, witnesses, evidence, anyone who can testify against him. We need to evacuate the patients. We need to stop him before he kills everyone trying. Cole pulled out his phone, cursed when he saw no signal. He's jamming communications again. Lena forced herself out of bed, her legs shaking but holding. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. We hunt him. You can barely walk. I can shoot. She grabbed a scalpel from the medical tray, tested its weight. And I know this building better than he does. They moved into the corridor together. The emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Patients were being shepherded into rooms by nurses following lockdown protocols. Security personnel were moving through the floors, checking doors, calling out clearances that went unanswered because the radios were dead. And somewhere in the building, Colonel David Draven was hunting. They found the first body on the stairwell landing between floors 2 and 3. A security guard, throat cut with military precision, his weapon missing. Cole checked for a pulse he knew he wouldn't find, then took the guard's spare magazines. "He's moving up," Cole said quietly. "Toward your room. He doesn't know you've left it yet." Then we circle behind him. Lena's training was fully engaged now, overriding pain and fear with tactical assessment. "Trap him between us and whoever's coming from above." They split up. Cole took the main stairwell. Lena took the service elevator, still functional on emergency power, up to the 5th floor, then worked her way down through the patient wards. Her surgical wound was screaming, but she ignored it. She'd operated through worse pain in worse conditions. She found Draven on the 4th floor. He was standing outside what had been her room, a suppressed pistol in one hand, a small device in the other, probably a shaped breaching charge. He was in civilian clothes, nothing marking him as military or federal, just another contractor, another ghost. Lena stepped out of the shadows behind him. "It's empty, Colonel. I'm not in there." Draven spun, weapon coming up, but Lena had already moved. She'd spent 5 years as a civilian, but muscle memory didn't fade. She closed the distance in 2 steps, her scalpel slashing in a precise arc that cut through the tendons in Draven's gun hand. The weapon clattered to the floor. He struck back with his offhand, catching her in the chest, driving the air from her lungs and sending fresh agony through her surgical site. They grappled, both wounded, both running on rage and training, and the desperate knowledge that only one of them was walking away. "You should have stayed quiet," Draven snarled, his good hand going for her throat. "Should have taken the money when I offered it. Should have disappeared." "You offered me money?" Lena gasped, fighting for air. "Through intermediaries, a generous settlement, new identity, fresh start. But you had to be a hero, had to tell the truth." His grip tightened. "Truth gets people killed, Cross. I thought you learned that in Kandahar." "I learned that lies get people killed." Lena drove her knee into his injured hand and he howled, his grip loosening. "I learned that cowards who betray their own country for money deserve whatever happens to them." "I served 30 years, Draven roared. 30 years of watching politicians and bureaucrats make decisions that got my people killed. Watching assets get burned because someone in Washington decided they weren't useful anymore. So yes, I sold information, I made money, and I made sure the right people lived and the wrong people died." "You're a traitor." "I'm a survivor." He lunged again, but this time Cole was there. He came out of the stairwell like a storm, weapon up, voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't move, Colonel. It's over." Draven froze, hands raised, but his eyes were calculating distances and angles. Lena could see him running scenarios, looking for an exit. "There's nowhere to go," Cole said, reading his thoughts. "The Inspector General's office has your financial records. They know about the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the payments from foreign intelligence services. They have communication intercepts proving you sold Ahmadi to his enemies. They have access logs showing you used Dr. Holt's credentials to track Lena. It's over." "You think this ends with me?" Draven laughed, a bitter sound. "I'm not alone, Cole. There are others. People in positions you can't imagine. This system is rotten from the inside out, and cutting me down won't stop it." "Maybe not," Cole said, "but it's a start." Federal agents poured into the corridor, real ones this time, with identification and authority that couldn't be faked. They surrounded Draven, weapons trained, voices shouting commands. He didn't resist as they forced him to the ground and secured his hands. But his eyes found Lena one more time before they hauled him away. "You think you won," he said, "but you just painted a bigger target on your back. Everyone I worked with will know your name now, will know what you did. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." "Then I'll see them coming," Lena replied. "That's more than you gave Ahmadi, more than you gave the soldiers who died believing they were serving their country." They took him away, and suddenly the corridor was quiet, except for the wail of the fire alarm and Lena's ragged breathing. Cole caught her as her legs finally gave out, lowering her gently to the floor. "Hospital," he said. "Now." I'm in a hospital. A different floor, with doctors who know what they're doing. Dr. Brennan knows what she's doing. Doctor, Brennan is going to kill me for letting you fight a trained operative with a fresh surgical wound. Despite everything, Lena laughed. It hurt, but it felt good. They patched her up in a proper OR this time, with Brennan working alongside a trauma surgeon brought in from the larger hospital downtown. When Lena woke hours later, she was in a new room, heavily guarded, properly secured, with sunlight streaming through real windows. Cole was asleep in a chair beside her bed, still in his blood-stained tactical gear, his weapon within reach even in sleep. The man who'd caught her when she fell, who'd believed her when no one else did, who'd put his career and life on the line to help her find justice. She watched him sleep for a moment, then reached out and gently shook his shoulder. He was awake instantly, alert and focused. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. "I've been resting for 5 years." Lena's voice was stronger now, steadier. "I'm done resting." Over the next week, the full scope of Draven's betrayal emerged. Financial investigators traced payments to him from intelligence services in 4 different countries. Communication analysis revealed he'd compromised at least 12 assets over a 7-year period, leading to deaths, kidnappings, and diplomatic incidents that had been blamed on operational failures rather than deliberate betrayal. And the trail led to 3 other officers in positions of authority who'd been part of his network. Senator Carver, facing federal charges, and the complete collapse of his presidential campaign, agreed to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony implicated 2 more members of Congress who'd helped cover up the Sand Viper operation in exchange for campaign contributions from defense contractors. The scandal consumed Washington for weeks. Hearings were held, agencies were reformed, new oversight protocols were implemented, and at the center of it all, like the eye of a hurricane, was Lena Cross, the nurse who'd refused to stay quiet. The media wanted interviews. Publishing houses offered book deals. Hollywood producers called with movie proposals. Lena turned down most of them, but she did sit for one interview with Diana Reeves, telling her story in full, naming names, holding nothing back. The interview aired on a Sunday evening and drew the highest viewership of any news program in 5 years. 2 weeks after Draven's arrest, Lena returned to Redwood City Medical Center for the first time since the Plaza incident. She walked through the front entrance instead of the ER bay, moving slowly but under her own power, wearing civilian clothes instead of a hospital gown or scrubs. The lobby fell silent when people recognized her. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire space erupted in applause. Staff, patients, visitors, all of them on their feet, acknowledging what she'd done. Lena felt tears sting her eyes, but didn't let them fall. She just nodded, accepting their recognition, and made her way to the administrative wing. Dr. Marcus Holt was waiting in one of the conference rooms. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by guilt and exposure. The investigation had revealed how Draven had used him, manipulated his resentment, stolen his credentials. Holt wasn't a conspirator, just a bitter man who'd been exploited by someone more dangerous. "Cross," he said when she entered. His voice was hoarse. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't know Draven was using my access. I didn't know about the assassination attempts. I was angry and jealous and small, and I let that make me a tool." Lena looked at him for a long moment. This man had made her life miserable for 3 years, had belittled her, undermined her, tried to destroy her career. But he'd also been a pawn, used by someone far more dangerous. "I don't forgive you," she said quietly, "but I don't need to carry hatred for you either. You'll face your own consequences. That's enough." Holt nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I've resigned. Surrendered my license. I won't practice medicine again." "That's your choice to make." She left him there and continued to Diane Mercer's office. The head of nursing stood when Lena entered, her professional mask firmly in place. "Miss Cross, I heard you were coming in today." "I wanted to return this in person." Lena pulled her hospital ID badge from her pocket and set it on the desk. "My resignation, effective immediately." Mercer blinked. "You're quitting?" "I'm moving forward. There's a difference." Lena's voice was calm and certain. "I've been offered a position with the Veterans Medical Alliance. heading up a new program to provide trauma care and mental health support to veterans transitioning out of combat roles. It's what I should have been doing 5 years ago. Lena, you have a place here. After everything you've done, after the attention you've brought to this hospital put me on administrative leave for standing up to a bully. It enabled Dr. Holt's behavior for years. It prioritized his ego over patient safety and staff welfare. Lena met Mercer's eyes directly. I don't want recognition from a system that only values me now that I'm famous. I want to build something better. She walked out of the office and back through the lobby, where staff were still processing what they'd witnessed. Jessica, the nurse with blonde highlights, caught up with her at the door. Cross, Lena, wait. Jessica's eyes were bright with emotion. I'm sorry for what I said, for thinking you were weak. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I'm not brave, Lena said gently. I was just tired of being scared. There's a difference. She stepped outside into sunshine and found Cole waiting beside a car. He'd been promoted to lieutenant colonel in the wake of the investigation, given command of a new unit focused on internal security and counterintelligence. But he'd made it clear that his first priority was making sure Lena stayed safe until every member of Draven's network was accounted for. Ready? He asked. More than ready. They drove across the city to a community center in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Inside, 50 veterans were waiting, men and women who'd served, who'd sacrificed, who'd come home to a country that didn't quite know what to do with them. The Veterans Medical Alliance had arranged this gathering, and Lena was scheduled to speak about her new program. She stood at the front of the room, looking at faces that reflected her own journey, the struggle to transition, the weight of invisible wounds, the challenge of finding purpose after war. My name is Lena Cross, she began. 5 years ago, I walked away from military medicine because I couldn't save everyone. I couldn't save the man I loved, and I convinced myself that meant I didn't deserve to save anyone. She paused, letting the words settle. I was wrong. I spent 5 years making myself invisible, accepting abuse, letting people diminish me because I thought that's what I deserved. And then one day, I saw someone in danger, and I moved. Not because I was brave, not because I was special, but because in that moment, I remembered who I really was. Heads nodded around the room. People who understood. The program we're launching is called Second Chance Medical, Lena continued. It's designed to give veterans transitioning out of combat medicine roles a pathway back into healthcare. We'll provide training, mental health support, placement assistance, and ongoing mentorship. We're going to build a network of providers who understand trauma because we've lived it, who know how to treat the whole person, not just their symptoms. She looked around the room, meeting eyes, seeing hope kindle. We're going to take everything we learned in service, the resilience, the training, the refusal to give up, and we're going to use it to heal instead of harm. We're going to prove that warriors can become healers, that broken doesn't mean finished. The room erupted in applause. People stood, asking questions, sharing stories, volunteering to help. And in that moment, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years, a sense of purpose that went beyond survival. After the event, Cole walked her back to the car. You're building something important, he said. I'm building what I needed 5 years ago. Maybe it'll help someone else avoid the mistakes I made. For what it's worth, I don't think you made mistakes. I think you survived the only way you knew how. And when the moment came, you were exactly who you needed to be. Lena looked at him. This man who'd become her partner in every sense that mattered. What happens now, after they catch the rest of Draven's network? I keep doing my job. You keep doing yours. And maybe, if we're lucky, we figure out how to do them together. I'd like that. They drove back to Lena's new apartment, a small place downtown, close to the Veterans Medical Alliance headquarters, with good security and better views. She'd bought it with the advance from the one book deal she'd accepted, a memoir that would tell the full story of Task Force Sentinel, Operation Sand Viper, and the Price of Truth. As she unlocked the door, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for your service, both times. She showed it to Cole. He traced it, found it came from a secure government line, encrypted beyond easy identification. Could be anyone in the intelligence community, or someone who knows what really happened, someone who sent me that flash drive in the first place. Probably someone we'll never meet. Good. Lena deleted the message. I don't need to know every secret. I just needed to expose the ones that mattered. 6 months later, Second Chance Medical had placed 43 veterans in healthcare positions across 8 states. The program had received federal funding and endorsements from 3 former presidents. Lena had been invited to speak at West Point, at medical schools, at conferences on healthcare reform and veteran services. She turned down most invitations, but she accepted one, a return to Fort Hamilton to speak to the graduating class of combat medics. She stood before them in the same auditorium where she'd once received her own training, looking at young faces full of determination and hope, and the kind of confidence that came before war showed you what you were really made of. "Some of you won't make it home," she said bluntly. "Some of you will come home changed in ways that make you strangers to yourselves. Some of you will carry wounds no one else can see and memories you can't escape." She paused. "But all of you, every single one, will have the choice to define what those experiences mean. To let them destroy you or reshape you. To hide from them or face them." She thought about David, about the operators who died in Kandahar, about 5 years of silence and invisibility and slow suffocation. And she thought about the moment she'd stepped in front of a bullet, the moment she'd chosen danger over fear, the moment everything had changed. "I spent 5 years running from my past," she told them. 5 years letting others define my worth. 5 years being small and quiet and acceptable. And then I remembered something important. I survived war. Everything else is just details. The auditorium was silent, listening. "You're about to face things that will test every part of who you are," Lena continued. "You'll see death. You'll make impossible choices. You'll carry burdens that no one else understands. But you're also going to save lives. You're going to be the reason someone makes it home. You're going to do things that matter in ways you can't even imagine yet." She met their eyes, these young soldiers about to walk the same path she'd walked. "And when it's over, when you come home and try to figure out what comes next, remember this. Your value isn't determined by whether you saved everyone. It's determined by whether you kept trying, whether you stayed true to who you are, even when the world tried to make you something less." She paused, then added quietly, "Don't let anyone make you invisible, not even yourself." The applause started slowly, then built like thunder. Lena stood there, accepting it, and for the first time in 6 years, she felt complete. Not healed. Healing was a process, not a destination, but whole, present, visible. After the ceremony, she met with individual students, answering questions, offering advice, connecting faces to futures. And when it was over, Cole was waiting by the door. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I told them the truth. That's all I can do." They walked across the base together, past buildings where she'd once trained, past monuments to soldiers who'd given everything. The evening sun painted everything gold, and somewhere in the distance, a bugle played taps. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked. "Everything that happened, everything you had to face." Lena thought about the question, about the pain and fear and danger, about the losses and betrayals and violence, about standing on City Hall steps with blood soaking through her hospital gown while the world watched, about fighting Colonel Draven in a darkened hospital corridor, about every moment that had brought her from silence to truth. "No," she said finally. "I regret the 5 years I wasted being afraid, but the moment I stopped running, the moment I chose to fight, that's when I became myself again. So no, I don't regret it. I earned it." They reached the parking lot where Cole's car waited, but before they got in, Lena turned back for one last look at Fort Hamilton. This place where she'd been forged and broken and ultimately reborn. Where David had trained beside her, where Task Force Sentinel had prepared for missions that would haunt her for years, but also where she'd learned that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about what you built from the pieces after. "Let's go home," she said to Cole. He took her hand. "Where's home?" "Wherever we're building something that matters." They drove away from the base as the sun set behind them, turning the sky to fire. Lena's phone buzzed with messages, veterans reaching out for help, journalists requesting interviews, organizations asking her to speak. She'd answer them later. Right now, she just wanted to sit in this moment, in this victory, in this hard-won peace. The news that evening led with breaking coverage. Colonel David Draven and 6 co-conspirators had been sentenced to federal prison for espionage, conspiracy, and murder. Senator Carver had accepted a plea deal that would see him serve 15 years. and a congressional investigation into intelligence oversight was recommending sweeping reforms to prevent future betrayals. At the bottom of the screen, a ticker read, Lena Cross, veteran medic whose testimony exposed conspiracy, awarded Presidential Medal of Freedom in closed ceremony. She'd accepted that award in a private room at the White House, with only a handful of witnesses present. The president had shaken her hand and thanked her for her service, both military and civilian, had told her that citizens like her were what made the country worth protecting. Lena had accepted graciously, but she knew the truth. Medals were recognition, not validation. She didn't need a president to tell her she mattered. She'd learned that lesson on her own. 3 months after that, Lena stood in the main auditorium at Redwood City Medical Center for a ceremony she hadn't asked for but had agreed to attend. The hospital had undergone significant changes: new leadership, reformed policies, mandatory anti-harassment training, and today they were unveiling something new: the Lena Cross Center for Combat Medicine and Veteran Healthcare, a wing of the hospital dedicated to treating veterans, staffed partially by Second Chance medical graduates, funded by a coalition of veteran organizations and private donors. It was everything Lena had wanted when she'd first left the military: a bridge between combat medicine and civilian care, a place where warriors could become healers. Gregory Vance, the hospital administrator, stood at the podium looking uncomfortable. He'd nearly lost his job over the Holt scandal and was clearly here under duress. Miss Cross represents the best of what healthcare should be, he said, reading from prepared remarks. Her courage, her dedication, her refusal to accept injustice, these are the values we hope to instill in this new center. Lena sat in the front row between Cole and Dr. Brennan, listening to words that meant nothing because they came too late. But the center itself, that mattered. The veterans who would be treated here, the medics who would find purpose here, the lives that would be saved here, those mattered. When it was her turn to speak, she kept it brief. This center exists because people refused to stay silent, because they demanded better, because they understood that taking care of our veterans isn't charity, it's obligation. She looked around the room at faces that had once ignored her, dismissed her, tried to break her. Thank you for building this. Now make sure it lives up to its name. She didn't mention the irony of a hospital that had tried to fire her now naming a wing in her honor. She didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew. Afterward, reporters asked for comments. Lena gave them nothing. She'd said everything that needed saying. Now she had work to do. That work took her across the country over the next year. She opened 4 more Second Chance medical centers, trained 200 veteran healthcare providers, and personally counseled dozens of combat medics struggling with the transition to civilian life. She testified before Congress twice more, advocating for better veteran healthcare funding and reforms to military medical training. And slowly, gradually, she built a life that looked nothing like the one she'd lost, but felt more authentic than anything before. She and Cole made it official one quiet evening in her apartment. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just a promise to face whatever came next together. He understood her nightmares. She understood his. They didn't try to fix each other or erase the past. They just built something new in the space between survival and healing. 2 years after the Plaza incident, Lena received a letter forwarded through multiple secure channels. It came in a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. You asked for the truth, you fought for it, you earned it, but there are more truths waiting if you're brave enough to find them. The network you exposed was one branch. The tree runs deeper. When you're ready, we'll talk. A friend in the shadows. Lena showed the letter to Cole. They discussed it, analyzed it, ran it through every security protocol they could think of. And then, together, they made a decision. Not yet, Lena said, filing the letter away. I spent 5 years running from the past and 2 years excavating it. I'm not ready to dive back into shadows. Not yet. But someday? Cole asked. Maybe. If the right moment comes. If people need help that only I can provide. She looked at him. But right now I'm needed here, building something positive, helping people heal instead of exposing how they were broken. Cole nodded. Then that's what we do. The letter stayed filed away, a reminder that some battles never truly end, they just pause between rounds. But Lena had learned that she didn't have to fight every battle the moment it appeared. She could choose when to engage and when to build. could balance justice with mercy, truth with wisdom. She'd spent 3 days being a warrior. She'd spent 5 years being invisible. Now she was spending her time being both and neither, complex and human, and flawed, and fierce, and exactly who she needed to be. On the 3rd anniversary of the day she'd taken a bullet for a stranger, Lena stood on the steps of City Hall again. But this time, she wasn't bleeding or desperate or fighting for her life. This time, she was here for a different ceremony. The city was unveiling a memorial to the victims of the Plaza attack, 7 people who'd been killed, 19 who'd been wounded. Lena had been asked to speak, to share her perspective as both a witness and a participant. She stood before the memorial, a simple stone with names engraved in bronze, and spoke to the gathered crowd. 3 years ago, I made a choice in a split second that changed my life and the lives of everyone connected to me. I didn't think about consequences or recognition. I just moved. She paused, touching the stone. These names represent people who didn't have that choice, who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong moment. Their loss is a reminder that evil exists, that violence is real, that danger doesn't care about innocence. She turned to face the audience. But these names are also a reminder that we have choices in how we respond to that evil. We can hide from it or face it. We can let fear make us small or let courage make us strong. We can stay silent or speak truth. She saw faces in the crowd, veterans she'd trained, nurses from Redwood City Medical, federal agents who'd protected her, journalists who'd amplified her story, and ordinary citizens who'd simply believed her when belief mattered most. "I'm not a hero," Lena said quietly. "I'm just someone who decided that silence and invisibility were more dangerous than standing up and being seen. And if my story teaches anything, I hope it's this. You are stronger than you think, braver than you know, and capable of changing the world in ways you can't imagine, if you're willing to step out of the shadows." She placed her hand on the memorial one more time, honoring the dead, then walked away. Not running, not hiding, just moving forward with purpose and certainty and the hard-won knowledge that she'd earned her place in the light. Cole fell into step beside her. "That was good." It was true. That's all that matters. They walked through the city together, just 2 people among millions, anonymous in the crowd. But Lena didn't feel invisible anymore. She felt present, engaged, alive in ways that had nothing to do with recognition or fame. Her phone buzzed. A text from one of her second-chance medical graduates. "Just saved my first life as a civilian ER nurse. Thank you for giving me a second chance." Lena smiled and typed back, "You gave yourself that chance. I just pointed the way." Because that was the truth she'd learned through fire and blood and betrayal and justice. You could give people opportunities, resources, support, but ultimately, everyone had to choose their own path out of darkness, had to decide whether to stay down or stand up, had to find their own voice and their own strength. She'd found hers, and now she spent her days helping others find theirs. As the sun set over the city, painting everything in shades of amber and gold, Lena Cross, formerly invisible, formerly broken, formerly silent, walked forward into whatever came next, not as a victim or a hero or a symbol, but as herself, complex and scarred and powerful and human. And that was enough, more than enough. That was everything.